Yet another Winged Eagle podcast preempted to bring to you Saturday night's Greg event. What's going on, guys? Happy Saturday once again. We're here for another one of these. We did one of these episodes a couple of weeks ago where I kind of scored a Saturday night off, and instead of doing the podcast during the day, we elected to do it at night after Collision, and it was a lot of fun. So we're going to run it back again tonight because this was one of the most newsworthy weeks in pro wrestling since around the time of WrestleMania, and we got a lot to get into. So there has never been a better day for me to do a nighttime podcast instead of a daytime one because we really have a ton of stuff to unpack tonight. So we will not try to waste too much time because I don't want to keep you guys up forever, but it is Saturday night. So if you're on the East Coast, it's currently 10 p.m. So plan on hanging out with us well past midnight tonight if you're down with that, because I have got notes galore. Started making notes for tonight's episode around Tuesday or Wednesday, and they were long then. So imagine where we're at now, coming off of last night's wild SmackDown. Y'all, the bloodline is fun again. Wrestling is fun again. Pro wrestling has woken back up because things have kind of been in a lull and a little stale since WrestleMania. This happens every year. It's nothing new. But especially on WWE's side of things like the bloodline angle and whatnot, everything just came right back to life last night in Chicago on one of the best SmackDowns, arguably not only of the year, but maybe for their entire run on Fox so far. Great episode. Everything was hitting on all cylinders last night, and it was a fun, hot episode, and it felt like it gave you the same vibes that we were getting around WrestleMania time between Rumble and Mania when everything was just so wild and crazy, and we had so much to discuss. Kind of got those feelings again last night now that we're heading into SummerSlam and Money in the Bank, another really exciting time of the year. And I thought last night's SmackDown was fun. So basically what we're going to do tonight is get into everything, but I'm probably going to open, or we're definitely going to be opening with SmackDown. So we'll talk about the CM Punk and Paul Heyman promo, the Drew and CM Punk stuff, the Punk and Cody stuff, the Bloodline stuff, the debut of Jacob Fatu, which was just wild last night. And we will also be getting into a lot of wrestling news. We will be talking about the unbelievably low rating that Dynamite scored this past week, like alarmingly low, like a huge chunk was just missing to the point where you thought it was an error. Apparently it's not. So we're going to discuss why that might have happened, how to fix it, how dire things might be in AEW, and what might happen next week, because that's such a drastic decrease, and the only thing going on was a Kendrick Lamar concert, and it was also summer solstice, so I'm sure people had other shit to do, but would that many people be affected by that to where it would affect the rating that drastically? So that's kind of weird. We'll be talking about all of that. We're also going to be talking about the fun speculation, it's only speculation and rumors at this point, that maybe Shane McMahon could be turning up in AEW, and that would just be wild. Kayla Braxton is leaving WWE. Her last day will be, I think, next week sometime. We'll have a little bit of news on the Hurt Business. We'll talk about Joe Hendry. I also want to give a little bit of opinions and thoughts on the latest episode of Who Killed WCW. We have a wrestling death to get into as well. We definitely want to get into the Wyatt 6. We had the big Raw review on Monday where we discussed the massacre, but we've got a little bit more information, and we'll discuss a little bit of what we think could be happening with the Wyatt 6 going forward, and an update on Chad Gable. Apparently he has been medically cleared from the gunshot wound to the head, and he's good to go for Monday in his Money in the Bank qualifier, so that's interesting. We'll also talk about this past week's Dynamite, that Dynamite that did score that very low rating, but I didn't think the show was really that bad, and I loved the face-off between Swerve and Ospreay on Wednesday. That was a lot of fun. We'll talk a little bit about maybe Rampage, and Collision just went off the air. We'll just recap a couple of the results of that and look at the Forbidden Door card as it stands, along with a lot of Money in the Bank speculation, a lot of SummerSlam speculation, when Roman Reigns might come back into the fold to get involved in this bloodline stuff, since there's a bunch of rogue Samoans and Tongans running around SmackDown right now and driving everybody crazy. So we'll talk about pretty much everything tonight. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Saturday. Let's rock and roll. I'm going to say hello to everybody here in the chat in just a second. If you don't mind, do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button, click that notifications bell, and subscribe if you have not done any of those things yet. Memberships are open if you would like to become a member. That would be super. Super chats are open as well. So if you have questions, stuff you want to discuss tonight, we will be doing maybe a Q&A later, any other wrestling news, tidbits, things that I do not discuss here that you want me to touch on. Let me know in the chat, and we will answer every super chat that comes through tonight as well. So buckle up. It ought to be a fun one. Let me do a quick couple of hellos in the chat, and then I will just let you guys know what to expect from us this week. We got a watch along tomorrow, Raw review on Monday, and some upcoming videos as well. So it should be a fun Saturday night. Hope you guys are great wherever you are in the world. If you're here in the U.S., it's a little late at night on the East Coast. The sun is still out here on the West Coast, 7:17 in the p.m. for me here in San Diego, and it's just a beautiful 80-degree sunny day. Couldn't have asked for a better summer day to do a podcast. It's been tremendous, and it's been hot. My fan's blowing, my windows are open. It's going to be a fun one. Good to see everybody. Let's do some pleasantries. Let's say hello to as many channel members as we can first. Excuse me. Population 420, always happy to see you. Red Raven Rucker, Danny in Oak Park, and Zane G. Look, my first 4 names, I've met 2 of y'all. That's crazy. Big J, nice to see you. We got JJ Leg, OG JJ Leg in the house. Also good to see Isaac. All sports are scripted. One time at band camp. Oh, I love those American Pie movies. The funniest was in American Pie 2 where she's at band camp and she goes, this one time here? Hilarious. Hilarious stuff. Good to see you, all sports. Mike Rouse is in the house as well. Garrett Osborne is here. Chaz Medeiros, Max Pokebruh. Good to see you, man. Let's see what other channel members I can shout out. Oh, my boy is here. Look at there. Amado Gonzalez. What's up, man? You better be partying with me in Vegas at WrestleMania next year. Hey, Greg, I'm here relaxing but packaging my package. Keep your hands off my package, man. We'll get to you probably Friday. Get excited. I will, man. Thank you as always. We're always kicking stuff over to the good Mike Work P.O. Box. You're the man. Oh, shit, I lost my place. Ah, son of a bitch. Okay, I think I'm back. I think, Max, I got you. Mike Witt, also happy to see you. There we go. Now I think I'm back on track. Mr. J is in the house as well. So is Shell Shock, Frank, Matt Karcher. We have Denny Downbad, Jose Lopez, 23 Fresh, JL is here as well. Sonic Plays, Gilbert Arbalo, Daniel Berry Sports, Always Radio, OTS Tribal Queen. We have Ricky Zalvadar, Ben Espinoza, not sure if I got you yet. Rodrigo, Brandon Anderson, Dan Price, what's up, Colin Wright, everybody else, Steven Jacobson, Brandon Anderson, Decimania, Adam O, probably missing a few others, Wrestling Fan for Life 98. Welcome, everyone, to the channel. If you like what you see in here, please consider subscribing. Since WrestleMania, our growth has been a fucking goose egg. I don't know what the hell's going on, so help me out. Let's get them subscribers up. We are trying to get on the road to 50,000 subscribers. I know we can get there pretty soon once the wrestling world wakes back up, and based on last night's SmackDown, it might just have done that. Let's talk about what to expect from us this week. First of all, tomorrow we're back for another classic pay-per-view watch-along. We're going to finish up our King of the Rings for the year with King of the Ring 2000. This is a wild one. How asinine is it that Shane and Vince McMahon main evented back-to-back King of the Rings? Insane. Totally insane, but it happened. And based on the card, when I was kind of deciding which King of the Ring to do, I was like, oh my God, I got to do King of the Ring 2000. There's just a ton of matches on this thing, all sorts of stuff going on. And it's a show that I have not watched in quite a while. So we're going to be watching that tomorrow night. But then a week from tomorrow is Forbidden Door. So we will be here watching Forbidden Door together. So keep that in mind for the next couple of Sundays. This Monday, we got to be back up here for a Raw review to see what goes on and how the Wyatt Six follow up with their crazy massacre. So we will be doing that on Monday. You might even get some content from me on Tuesday, and I'm working on a couple of SummerSlam themed videos to be posted the first or the second week in July while I'm vacationing in Hawaii. So I will have some content hitting the channel, and I'll probably do a video or two maybe while I'm there. So I'll try to keep content flowing into the channel even when I'm gone this summer. So that's a couple of things you can expect from me in the next few days and for the rest of the month. We also have Money in the Bank coming up, I think 2 weeks from today. Yeah, 2 weeks from today is Money in the Bank. So we'll be here for that one too. watching that. And then just a couple of days after Money in the Bank is when I bolt on vacation. So busy next couple of weeks with 2 pay-per-views to watch together. So it should be fun here on the GMW channel. Subscribe like always. Thank you so much, guys. All right, so let's get into our first order of business. Normally on these podcasts, I start with the news. But last night's SmackDown was so fucking hot that I think we have to start with that. Tremendous show in Chicago. And, oh man, where do we even start? This is, I'm going to kind of bounce around SmackDown. I want to start because I want to have everything kind of sectioned off here, and I definitely want to start with what the show opened with, and that was CM Punk coming out in Chicago. But I want to talk about what happened with him and Heyman, him and Cody, him and the Bloodline, and him and Drew. So the show opened up last night with CM Punk returning to Chicago as he said he would at the Clash at the Castle scrum or presser. He mentioned that he was given permission to skip the Corpus Christi Raw in order to go to SmackDown in Chicago, his hometown. Now, on Monday, we saw Drew McIntyre, who, of course, was screwed 1 week ago today by CM Punk in Glasgow, Scotland at Clash at the Castle. And Drew came out on Monday, and I even said this prior to Monday. Prior to Drew quitting, I said in the Clash of the Castle review, once Punk announced that he's going to be going to Chicago on Friday, I said, we might not even see Drew on Monday. He's going to go to Chicago and kill CM Punk in front of his hometown, just like Punk screwed Drew in front of his. So that felt like it was a given from the moment Punk said, I'm going to Chicago last week. But then on Monday, McIntyre's on the show, comes out to the ring, gets on the mic, about to cut a promo, can't even get the words out, too frustrated, says, you know what, forget it, I can't do this anymore, I quit, and walks away. Now, he wasn't fooling any of us, because even in the Raw review on Monday, we were saying, I'm not sure if Drew's character is pretending to quit just to throw to lure CM Punk into like a false sense of security or victory and then ambush him on Friday, or is Drew's character really quitting, and then throughout the course of the week, he has a change of heart? We didn't really get that answer last night, but at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. Drew showed up as expected last night on SmackDown. So we saw Drew McIntyre quit on Raw. We were waiting for him to show up here tonight, but he didn't come out to the ring. Punk was out there by himself first, says a few words to the Chicago audience, and that's when he is joined, or interrupted, I should say, by Paul Heyman, who approaches the ring. Fans start chanting Roman Reigns, and Punk says, there's one guy that can come to this ring when I'm here and get the fans to chant Roman Reigns, and that's you, and I'll forgive you for it or whatever. So he forgave Heyman for the power that Heyman has over the audience. And it was pretty funny. He goes, you all right? You don't look very good. And of course, Paul Heyman has been a nervous wreck for weeks. He's the only thing holding this Bloodline story together, because it's been really quite, I don't want to say full-blown boring, because it's very cool to see Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga and now Jacob Fatu come in. But Solo, fans don't really accept him as like a real tribal chief. I think we all know better. So Solo, kind of tormenting Heyman. The performances by the Samoans, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it's Heyman's performance, his over-the-top performance, that I think is really what was keeping this thing afloat until we got to this Chicago SmackDown, where everything's going to pick back up again heading into SummerSlam. So now we're cooking again, but between WrestleMania and now, it was really Heyman holding this thing together. And I've speculated many times that Heyman's performance, Heyman's demeanor towards Solo and the other Bloodline members is so ridiculously over the top fearful that I feel like Heyman's playing him. Like, Heyman's the master manipulator. He's made a whole career of manipulating and lying to people. So my belief, since there's always these little exchanges between Heyman and Solo, you haven't, like that one a couple of weeks ago when Solo's like, you haven't talked to Roman Reigns, have you? And then Heyman's like, no. And then Solo's like, good, because I did. And he said this, this, and this. And so I'm like, Heyman's probably just playing these guys. He's probably going to reveal at some point in the next few weeks that he's been communicating with Roman Reigns the whole time, and they've been allowing Solo to lie and to dig himself deeper and deeper. That's kind of what I've felt was going on here. Maybe a lot of people think The Rock is talking to the new Bloodline, Heyman's talking to the original Bloodline, and that's how the Survivor Series match is going to come together. We don't really know yet, But Heyman, it's hard to believe that he would be this sniveling, groveling, frightened, scared after the career he's had, the men he's managed, the matches he's been involved with, the situations he's been involved with. He's seen far worse than Solo Sikoa and Tama fucking Tonga. So I really am struggling to understand why Heyman is such a trembling mess around these guys. And I think he's playing them. And I think he's going to reveal that at some point. We'll see if I'm right about that or not, but he's just so ridiculous about it. And so when he gets in the ring last night with CM Punk, he's like, look, I want to do you, first thing he does is just walk up to him, give him a hug. He just hugs CM Punk and he's like, thanks, I needed that. I'm a fucking mess right now. And he said that he was driving or something with Solo Sikoa in Chicago. They came across a billboard or something. Or no, he heard on the radio that Chicago was Punk Town, and Solo, since he's the new tribal chief, he wants every town to be his town. So I'm here to do you a favor. I'm going to want one in return. And my favor to you is that I'm telling you to leave the ring right now, because if you don't, they're going to come after you. And that's when the bloodline comes out. So the bloodline, Solo and Tama and Tongaloa, or the Tongans, I guess we're calling them now, come to the entranceway there, come to the ring. And Punk asks Paul Heyman, hey, what was that other favor you were going to ask me about? And Heyman says, please take me with you. Like, rescue me from the bloodline. So Punk looks at the bloodline and he's about to acknowledge him. He goes, I'm going to acknowledge you. I acknowledge that I don't see the bloodline. I see a bunch of fake-ass Usos and a phony tribal chief. And so that's when the bloodline get in the ring. They're about to attack when Cody Rhodes slides in from behind. And this was so slick. The way Cody came in the ring with two baseball bats and just casually tossed one to Punk. He just grabbed it, snatched it with one hand, and they're ready with the bats. That was so perfectly shot, executed, and it couldn't have looked better. To me as a fan watching that, just the casual way Cody was like, oh, here's your bat. And Punk's like, thanks. Hey, come on, bring it, bitches. Oh, so good. And there's just something about, I put this on Twitter last night. I was watching SmackDown. I was watching that segment and Cody comes in the ring, hands Punk the bat. And something about seeing the two of them together, CM Punk and Cody Rhodes side by side in 2024 gives me the same tingliness in my nethers that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels gave me when I would see them together, like in 1995, when they were both baby faces, prior to Shawn winning the Rumble and facing Bret at Mania. There was a couple instances there in like the second half of 95 where Bret and Shawn were kind of in the same place at the same time. And I remember just thinking it was kind of cool because you knew they were going to be future rivals, their former rivals, and you knew, you could smell it, that they're going to be battling for the world title very, very soon. And so to see them kind of together, or maybe even on the same side a little bit, was just kind of cool. And seeing Punk and Cody last night just dredged up those same type of feelings. As a fan, it's hard to describe. If you weren't around back then, you're not going to know what the fuck I'm talking about. But if you're old enough to remember Bret and Shawn around those days, maybe you'll understand what I mean. And that's kind of the vibe it gave me, because Punk and Cody are going to, Punk's health pending, of course, and he stays healthy and he can actually have a run here. We should be expecting a big Cody and Punk showdown sometime in the future. So seeing them kind of together here, since Punk is on Raw, showing up on SmackDown side by side with Cody, was nice. Every time we've gotten a Cody and Punk interaction since Punk came back, it's been nothing but gold on TV. So that was awesome. I loved that. They ran off the bloodline, and Cody lays down a challenge right there to Solo Sikoa in the main event of SmackDown last night. So that was going to be our main event. So we're going to fast forward now to the end of the show, and then we'll circle back and talk about Drew and Punk. But after Cody issued the challenge to Solo, I guess it was accepted. They make the match for the main event. And right before we go out for the main event, you see Heyman and Solo backstage. And Heyman told Solo, he said, Roman said when he got on the plane after WrestleMania, he said that CM Punk is off limits and that Cody is not his to handle. And Solo says, well, I've got some bad news for you. Roman Reigns isn't coming back, which we know Roman Reigns is coming back But why is Solo saying this? What is making Solo's character believe Roman is not coming back? Unless he's just completely full of shit and he's just saying whatever the hell he wants, which is foolish because what do they think Roman Reigns is doing? Sitting on an underground bunker just reading comics? Like, you don't think he's watching and sees what the fuck? So if you're just blatantly lying and speaking for someone who's not saying these things, what's going to happen when this guy comes back? Solo Sikoa is going to be exposed as being the dumbest motherfucker that's ever lived in this business, if this is what he is doing. So the fact that he says Roman isn't coming back makes me wonder if it's more, maybe Rock related and how this is all going to work. I just feel at some point, either at Money in the Bank or at SummerSlam, Roman might just appear. A couple of years ago, I was there. I was at SummerSlam in Vegas when it was Roman and Cena. And at the end of the match, Brock Lesnar randomly came back. And maybe Roman has some sort of a return like that. Maybe the return actually happens at SummerSlam. He doesn't have a match. He just comes out for a big confrontation. And a lot of those big bloodline segments and angles, some of those happened at pay-per-views. The Royal Rumble close a couple of years ago with Sami Zayn and so much of that stuff. So we could be on the verge of something like that going down at SummerSlam, especially if it's going to maybe be Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa. I feel like that's not a SummerSlam match. Cody versus Solo is not a SummerSlam match unless Roman comes back. But before we get to that, in the main event of SmackDown last night, Cody faced Solo Sikoa. And then after Solo told Heyman Roman wasn't coming back, that got my mind racing. Okay, when are we going to see him? What are they going to do here? And Cody and Solo, it feels like there's a title match coming up, and we're probably not going to get a clean finish here, and we did not. The Tongans interfered, of course. Disqualification and a beatdown on Cody. Randy Orton and Kevin Owens come out to help out and to assist Cody Rhodes. And that's when you could hear the crowd starting to make noise. That's when Jacob Fatu appeared out of nowhere and destroyed all three men. Wiped out Cody, wiped out Orton, wiped out Kevin Owens. He looked amazing. He looked slim and trim, best shape of his life, super intense, and then took Cody, got him on the outside of the ring, laid him on the announce table, and hit Cody Rhodes with a top rope splash from the top rope to the announce table on the floor. Just a sick visual, just perfectly done. Jacob Fatu is here, and things are getting interesting now. I think it was a brilliant move by Triple H to save Jacob Fatu's debut for this Chicago crowd. Chicago's going to be way hotter. Chicago is going to react to him where maybe some of those other towns wouldn't have, or if they brought him in at the pay-per-view, and they actually had a reason here for him to interfere since it was Cody and KO and Randy Orton now. And since all those men are kind of mixing it up, and as we'll talk about later, Kevin Owens lost his Money in the Bank qualifier, it feels like they're setting up for a six-man at Money in the Bank. Maybe Cody, Orton, and Kevin Owens against Solo and Jacob and Tonga or something. Fuck, I don't know. It feels like something like that. And then maybe at SummerSlam, we get Cody and Solo for the title. And that's not a match I really want to see at SummerSlam unless it leads to the return of Roman Reigns. Cody maybe beats Solo, and then as he's celebrating, out comes Roman Reigns, and we have a face-off. Holy shit, what does this mean? Or maybe something happens between now and SummerSlam, and we get that Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton match that we've been talking about. But based on how it all was working last night, it doesn't feel like Cody and Randy is on the radar anymore. I want to see it at some point, but it might not be our SummerSlam match. It's probably going to be Cody associating with the bloodline in some way, it looks like. Now that Jacob Fatu is there, he's going to be turning a lot of heads, and he's going to be outright outshining Solo Sikoa. So Solo Sikoa is going to try to be the strong, leader, tribal chief of this new bloodline. But that's not going to last any further than SummerSlam, because Roman's going to get back in the mix, and he's going to either reclaim his territory or try to wipe out this rogue bloodline and reinstall the original with the Usos and all of that. Just not sure. But man, when we get to that War Games match, if they can get Sami Zayn involved in that, if it's Roman, the Usos, and Sami against these four fucks, oh my God, it would be so great. So great. But that was an excellent close to SmackDown last night, the beginning with Heyman and Punk, and then Cody saving him with the bats and all of that, and then the main event, and then Jacob Fatu finally arriving in Chicago, where he made the biggest impact I think possible. He looked amazing, and man, he makes an excellent addition. He really adds some spice and flavor to this bloodline. I like Tonga Loa and I like Tama Tonga, but I've really missed that kind of like Umaga type of Samoan, in that bloodline family, just the wilder ones, just like somebody just going to bite your head off if you cross them. And I like Jacob Fatu's intensity. Umaga had that intensity about them, and I love that. So now that he's here, we'll see what he can do. Fightful Select had a write-up on Jacob Fatu's debut. Here's what they had to say. Fatu has been signed to WWE for several months and was backstage all during WrestleMania weekend. We had never been given firm debut plans, though we were given an implied reason as to what could have taken so long. It had been noted that Jacob Fatu had never wrestled outside of the United States. MLW sources had previously indicated that was because of Fatu's criminal record when he was younger in a life that he left far behind. However, it was noted that prevented him from accepting bookings outside the United States. We're not sure if that will be the case moving forward, but we were told that with the huge number of international PLE events and television tapings WWE had in the spring and summer, that was likely a hurdle. In the past, his history was a primary reason he'd not been hired. However, we're told that WWE's newer regime has long been interested in Fatu. Sean Ross Sapp was told that Fatu made immediate good impressions with WWE and had a very respectful approach to everyone backstage so far. So that's good news for Jacob, but I know he had some, burglary or robbery issues when he was younger. He did spend some time in jail. So if he can never travel outside the U.S., that's really going to be difficult. He's going to have to miss a lot of shows. That could really hurt him in opportunities. I'm hoping that, these, maybe that's something that can be rectified in the future, or you can get those bans lifted. I don't really know how it works when you're a criminal to that degree and travel bans and whatnot. But man, considering how many shows WWE does outside the U.S. now, especially if those shows, turn out to be Money in the Banks or something, and you would otherwise be in them, but they can't put you in them because of your history, that's got to suck. Hopefully they can manage it and it's all good and it doesn't cost Jacob Fatu any more opportunities than it has already costed him. So stay out of trouble, boys and girls. Otherwise, you can really fuck your life up. But Jacob Fatu is in WWE now. I'm excited to see how everything goes there for him, and I think he's quickly going to rise to the most interesting member of that particular bloodline group. And welcome aboard, Jacob Fatu. Great to see you here. So WWE also, by the way, this week filed a trademark for the name Cesar Sikoa. And a lot of people thought that might be for Jacob Fatu. I was hoping it was not, because I want Jacob Fatu to stay Jacob Fatu. Cesar Sikoa might be for either Hikuleo, who's been rumored to be coming to WWE as well, so got another one, or Zilla Fatu, who is the son of Umaga. Jacob Fatu is the son of Sammy Fatu Tama of the Islanders. And Umaga's son Zilla could be used for that trademark as well, or it could be Hikuleo. So that is crazy that in the bloodline, the current bloodline right now, we have the sons of Haku and Tama, one of my favorite teams in the 80s, the Islanders. Even though they never won the championships, I just really always liked them. They had the third Islander came in there for a while as well. Can't remember if that was Samu they brought in for that or who that was. I don't think it was Stevie Afi. But they did kind of have a third Islander for a little while there. But I always just loved the Islanders team as a kid. I loved their colorful, tropical-looking trunks. And they were badasses. And, of course, Sam Fatu Tama, he was in that movie with Roddy Piper. And, I don't know, I was just a big fan of those days. I loved the Islanders and the Samoan wrestlers of the 80s. I have fond memories of all that. So to see these guys now coming up, the sons of all these men, is just wild to me. And that bloodline is insane. There's a whole lot of them there now. A third of the roster in WWE is fucking related. Let that sink in. Yeah. All right, so the other huge thing that happened last night on SmackDown was, of course, the attempted murder of CM Punk. We knew this was going to happen. We talked about it just a little while ago. McIntyre getting screwed at Clash at the Castle, Punk mentioning that he's going to be on SmackDown in Chicago this Friday, and that's immediately when red flags went up for me. I'm like, oh, that's going to be where Drew McIntyre fucking kills you. And then on Monday, we saw Drew come out to the ring and quit, and we knew he was going to be here tonight on SmackDown, but he didn't arrive in the ring. Punk had his moment there with Heyman and Cody and the Bloodline, and all that happened. And then we cut backstage to just a random segment back there where it's Grayson Waller arguing with DIY. And I think, is Aldis down there back there as well? Maybe not. Those dudes are arguing, and they're in front of one of those large, garage doors in the back of the arena. And the door starts slowly coming up to reveal a laid out and bloody CM Punk with a Drew McIntyre standing right over him. And it was great. CM Punk got absolutely annihilated and only had to take one small bump because this was all done off camera. So he got killed. He's covered in blood. He's laying on the concrete. And it was such a beautiful, simple reveal. For years, WWE has tried to tell us that production value is all about as many LED lights as you can find, 3D fucking renders on the screen, all sorts of different effects, lasers out the ass, when all it is just be compelling. You didn't cost nothing. You didn't have to put any LED lights around that garage door. All you had to do is raise it to reveal what was happening there. Simple and cheap and 100 times more effective. So glad Kevin Dunn is gone. I'm almost pissed that we had him 10 or 15 years longer than we should have. That fool should have been gone since the mid-2000s. And we had all those extra years of his ass. And it's kind of annoying now that we see how good production can be when you just have, a fresh set of ideas. And we realized how long we had to deal with just that formulaic day in, day out, same old nonsense presented, shown the same way every week, same camera angles, same entrances, same time between segments, same flow of the show. Everything was just the same every week. It was just a copy and paste type of thing. And now we're getting a little bit of modifications to that. WWE simplifying things and a lot of these long sweeping, long camera shots for entrances and all of these things we're seeing now. Like, wow, this is the way it should have always been. And when you see something as simple as we saw last night with that reveal, it really makes you wonder what the hell WWE's been smoking for the past God knows how many decades with that buffoon at the helm. So it's just so nice to see stuff like this now. And that reveal was so well done. And Punk's laying there and Drew's there just in his tank top standing over him like, oh shit. And so then he picks up Punk, puts him on his shoulders and just walks his ass right out into the arena. Brings him out to the aisleway, just dumps him over his shoulders. That was the only bump CM Punk took on camera. It was just when he landed on the ground there. And officials were out to get between Drew and Punk, and Drew didn't really even say anything. It was just his revenge. He was able to exact some revenge on CM Punk, and there was no way Drew was not going to be at the show in my mind. So I thought that was really well done. I'm glad that it happened in the back and not in the ring. And it was clever and it was well presented and well executed and it looked awesome. So now McIntyre has got his revenge or a little bit of revenge on CM Punk. He even said, I'll see you on Monday. So he's going to be back. He did not quit. He will be on Raw on Monday. And I feel like now I said all the way back a week ago at the Clash at the Castle review, and I said this in a tweet the same day, I said, Drew is going to show up in Chicago and attack Punk, and that will probably keep him off TV until after Money in the Bank. He'll lay a beating on him that will put him off TV so WWE can get through Money in the Bank in a couple of weeks. And then right after that, he's back and we're building our SummerSlam match. We've known that. All that debate about Clash at the Castle, about Drew winning and whatnot. I've been saying ever since WrestleMania, provided Punk is healthy, which when we do the math of recovery time, everyone's assuming he will be, McIntyre and Punk is the match we're getting. They wouldn't be doing all this shit with these guys. This constant never-ending trolling and screwing and fucking with each other for the better part of half of a year if you weren't going to get a match at SummerSlam. So I was really struggling to understand why fans were so shocked at the ending of Clash of the Castle. McIntyre is Punk and Punk is our SummerSlam match. We know that. Gunther already has a title shot. So it can't be Drew and Gunther. It's going to be Drew and Punk. We know that. If it wasn't going to be Drew and Punk, they wouldn't be doing all this shit. Fucking simple. Like, fucking eyes, use them. Take it in. Let your brain process it, you know? So I couldn't get, like, I understood fans being upset that Drew didn't win. Sure, no problem. Be as upset as you want. You're a Drew McIntyre fan. You wanted to see him win the title. I feel your pain. I've been there. But don't act like it was some crazy, inept, creative decision. That decision made perfect fucking sense for WWE's current storylines and ongoing angles. And one of their biggest ones is Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. And it is one of these type of feuds that really does get you interested because Punk is a polarizing guy. You know, he hasn't been in WWE in over a decade. And even when he did come back, he had one match with Dominic, worked 14 minutes in the Royal Rumble and got hurt. And that's it. So, you know, we haven't really still gotten Punk yet. So it's still really kind of cool and fresh and new to see him back in the WWE. And he's feuding with someone like McIntyre. And the two of them have had one of the most fun back and forths in recent memory, you know, and they've been doing a really good job of treading that line of, you know, blurring the line of work and reality and stuff. And I think they've been doing great. So I'm into this match. And I think McIntyre and Punk, I'm hoping, can be the same type of match that we saw from Punk and Brock Lesnar all the way back in 2013. Granted, that was 11 years ago. And I think this, when Punk is healthy, when he's cleared fully, and he's now heading to SummerSlam to face McIntyre, it is absolutely crucial. And I mean fucking crucial for CM Punk to stay healthy, at least for a little while. I mean, my God, going back to 2022, 2 years now, Punk has been out and then out again and then out again. You know, in the last 2 years, he's spent very, very little time on TV, and he spent the majority of that time recovering from injuries. If he comes back again and he gets hurt again, fold up to 10. It's it. You're done. I mean, it's really important if Punk can come back, not get hurt, and have a good, healthy, like, year. If we're lucky, maybe two, to where he's wrestling on pay-per-views with a relatively regular frequency, and he's not getting hurt. He doesn't need to have TV matches every week and shit. He doesn't have to work a Cody schedule. But having him wrestle and have programs that are able to be seen through from beginning to end without injury interruptions is very crucial to his legacy having a satisfying closure, if you will, for him, for us. And I want that for him. I want it for him because I know it will result in tremendous TV. If this guy can stay healthy and he's on the top of his game and we can get another 1 to 3 years of Punk before he's done in the ring forever, we should consider ourselves blessed and lucky because that's something I did not think we would get again. But he's got to stay healthy. And I worry with this match with McIntyre, it's going to be brutal. And McIntyre is a lot bigger than him, a lot stronger than him. And Punk is going to have to... He's not going to be able to walk through this match. He's going to have to lay it all out there. He's going to have to take bumps, take abuse on his body. And I do not want him to come out of that SummerSlam match injured. There's also been talk about WWE perhaps bringing back the Bad Blood pay-per-view this year on October 5th, which was the same date of the original Bad Blood all the way back in 97, the day that Brian Pillman died, and had the first ever Hell in the Cell, debut of Kane, that whole thing. So they're talking about bringing back Bad Blood on October 5th and have a Hell in the Cell match on there. And I don't like when you just plant matches like that on a calendar so far in advance, but if there's one feud that would be suitable for a Hell in a Cell match, this is the one. So if Bad Blood on October 5th is earmarked for a CM Punk and Drew McIntyre Hell in a Cell match, that could be great. But again, Punk has got to be healthy. He's got to stay healthy through all of this. A lot of fans also starting to sniff out a double turn. We might be watching the progress of a double turn right now that WWE is going to try to pull off at SummerSlam. You know, and so I feel like if it's a double turn, then if it's a double turn, you got to have Punk win. I mean, granted, we saw a double turn at Mania 13 and Austin lost, but I think a double turn would work best if Punk won. And then you do the blow off at Bad Blood in Hell in the Cell where McIntyre gets his ultimate revenge and puts down Punk, beats him, stands over his broken, bloody body after the match. And who knows, Remember at the first ever Bad Blood, there was a lot of people don't remember this. There was a stipulation in the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels Hell in the Cell match. The winner of that match went to Survivor Series to face Bret Hart. You do that again with Punk and Drew. The winner of this match gets a title shot at Survivor Series against Gunther, because Gunther will be champion by the time we get to October 5th. Mark my words. So you could do it that way. Or Drew wins at SummerSlam, Punk wins the Hell in the Cell, and Punk gets a title shot against Gunther at Survivor Series. Punk, Gunther for the title at Survivor Series. Bloodline, Civil War in War Games. I don't know, Cody versus someone. Could be a good-looking Survivor Series. So something to think about there with Drew and Punk after SummerSlam. Where you got to understand we're in the middle of a program here. So SummerSlam, provided nobody gets hurt, will not be the last time Punk and Drew have a one-on-one battle of any kind. That's just going to be the first. It might be a trilogy. It might just be 2 matches. Who knows? But it could be a trilogy if they do something at Berlin, or if there's a September pay-per-view. I don't know. You guys can let me know if they're doing something in September. What do they usually do in September? Night of Champions. That's not. Is that still a thing? What's the September pay-per-view these days? What happened last year? I don't even know. But I think something like that could be fun for Drew and Punk if you have this thing blown off at Bad Blood at Hell in the Cell. That could be good. And if you incorporate a double turn in there somehow, all the better. All the better, you know? I like this feud. I like this feud a lot. But what's making me so unimaginably nervous is that I'm worried about Punk's health. I just need him to stay healthy. As a fan, I need his body to hold together. Anything that happens to him is not his fault. I'm Punk's age. I'm older than Punk. So if you get hurt, I get it. Fucking hurts for me walking up the steps sometimes. So I understand when you get to this age, things are going to happen. Your body is not going to be as strong as it was when you were in your 20s, and injuries are a little bit more likely. I just hope that he's careful, and I hope everything works out and he does not suffer any more setbacks, because then I think you can start considering winding him down as a performer and putting him in another role, because it's just heartbreaking every time he comes back and gets cooking. Boom, immediately injured again. So let's not have that happen this time. CM Punk, Phil, please. And let's do that double turn. I'm into that too. Let me know what you think about the double turn possibility. I know I got a couple of super chats in here to answer. I will get to those in 1 second once we're done with the SmackDown results. But we'll finish up these SmackDown results, then we'll pause, talk to the chat a minute, and then we will get into wrestling news. And we are going to open with that dismal AEW rating, which is still kind of blowing my mind. We'll be getting to that in a moment. All right, what else happened on SmackDown last night? Okay, so we had another LA Knight and Logan Paul confrontation. LA Knight crashed Logan Paul's house, I think, last week and was chilling in his pool, probably pissed in it, which is fine. And then Logan Paul was out last night on SmackDown, cutting a promo, kind of calling out LA Knight. He was interrupted by Santos Escobar. They exchanged some words. A brawl happens. Logan Paul in from behind, nails LA Knight. Knight staggers to get free or get back up, and then Logan Paul decks him and knocks him out with a punch. And again, I don't know if they're trying to do this one for... Or wait, is LA Knight in Money in the Bank? Who is qualified for Money in the Bank so far? You guys let me know in the chat, because I kind of have forgotten. But LA Knight and Logan Paul feels like a SummerSlam match, not a Money in the Bank match. But they're building this like they might announce it for Money in the Bank unless Knight or Paul is in Money in the Bank already. I've forgotten who's qualified. But I'm really hoping that the LA Knight and Logan Paul issue is one that's resolved at SummerSlam. That's got to be a SummerSlam match for sure. So let's hope it happens there. I feel like it will. And when it does, I think LA Knight will win that United States Championship. He absolutely has to. We also had some Money in the Bank qualifiers last night as well, and I think the most fun match was the women's match. It was Chelsea Green and Michin and Bianca Belair in a Money in the Bank qualifier. Obviously, Bianca's going to win this one, right? Oh, no, she's not. She hits Michin with the KOD. Now, Chelsea got styles clashed by Mia Yim earlier on in the match, which knocked her out. Then Bianca hits Mia with the KOD. Chelsea then recovers, comes in, tosses out Bianca Belair, dives on Mia Yim, and gets the 1-2-3 to advance to the Money in the Bank. Great celebration. The Chicago crowd loved it. And I think Chelsea is a lot of fun. She's got some of that Carmella in her, but she's almost funnier. Chelsea's so much more entertaining than Carmella to me. And even though I don't think Chelsea Green should necessarily win the briefcase, I think she would be incredibly entertaining with it. And her character is great. And why not? You know, I mean, that women's division has got a lot of talent in it. And Chelsea Green, up until this point, has been pretty much losing. And even though she's a strong female character on the show in terms of her entertainment value, in the ring, she is a bottom tier wrestler who loses most of the time when she's in there with anybody close to her in star power or whatever. So her winning here was cool. If she does somehow win Money in the Bank and she wins the ladder match, I will not complain at all. For me, a lot of times, I want the briefcases to be in the hands of entertaining people, people who aren't mutes or, lack charisma or whatever. I want them to be, being held by people who can have some fun with the briefcase. And I think Chelsea would definitely resemble that. So she winds up winning great. She qualified last night and Chicago reacted big time. Now, the men had some qualifiers as well. Andrade qualified. He defeated Kevin Owens and Grayson Waller. So since Kevin Owens is out, that's why I think we might be looking at some 6-man at Money in the Bank with the Bloodline. And Andrade qualifying is great. Very, very happy he's in that. He's another guy that he might not be in the top of my list in terms of guys that I think would be the most fun with the briefcase. I'd like to see Punk or Seth Rollins or somebody else kind of crazy. But Andrade would still be a solid choice. If he wound up taking the briefcase, I'd be cool with that too. So Andrade and Chelsea qualify for Money in the Bank, and so does Carmelo Hayes, who defeated Randy Orton and Tama Tonga. So Orton and Owens lost their opportunities. That's why I think they're doing that 6-man, and Carmelo also qualified for the Money in the Bank. So Carmelo and Andrade in the Money in the Bank along with Chelsea last night, which was awesome. Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Andrade, Carmelo, and Jey Uso. Okay, so that's all. I'm thinking I'm missing some people. Okay, just them. So Jey Uso, Andrade, and Carmelo for the men, or Carmelo, excuse me, and for the women, Chelsea Green, Io Sky, Tiffany Stratton. Thank you for that, Rodrigo. And we popped off Chelsea winning. Isaac, were you at the show? That's awesome. Bianca versus Jade at SummerSlam, Kaiser Media. Yeah, I mean, I think so, but they better, well, I guess they got some time. I'm about to say they better get on that, but we got Money in the Bank first. So they might want that to run its course, and then they do a bit on SmackDown on TV with Jade and Bianca where, so how do you get to that match? Where something happens, do they try to team up again to reform the team, and then there's a miscommunication, and Bianca eats a pump kick to the face? Does Jade Cargill turn heel on her? Or is it like I really hope it's not this. I really hope it's not the two of them are baby faces and it's a friendly challenge. Let's see who's better type of thing. I don't really want to see that unless in the match we get a heel turn. Something like that, What do y'all think? Might be a weird match to get to, but I think on the SummerSlam card on the marquee, it's going to look very, very good. Good to see Complexity, Kai's Media, Craig Lozo, and the Juliet. Some new names since we got going here. Probably a lot of you. David Brown, also good to see you and welcome back. Let me knock out before we start talking about wrestling news and that crazy AEW rating. Let me knock out these comments here. A couple of supers we'll hit real quick. Excuse me. Let me see. Mike Witt. I think I got you first, my friend. Thank you, dude, for the $2. Punk vs. Drew, got to be a street fight at SummerSlam. That is a good point. Even though it's going to be the first match between these two, you got to stip that match, You can't really just have a rivalry this personal. You can't just be able to be DQ'd. So, yeah, street fight sounds like the way to go for SummerSlam. Street fight or no DQ or something like that. Street fight sounds the best, and then you can blow that shit off in Hell in a Cell in October is what I'm thinking there. Zane G's got a couple of very generous drops. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you as always. Let's hit this first one for $20. Thank you very much, my friend. Now I know this is way out of left field, but what if the new bloodline keeps screwing with Heyman, with everyone trying to help Heyman, gets screwed over and beaten down by the new bloodline only for Lesnar to make the save? That could happen as well. I don't know where Lesnar would fit in. Lesnar and Roman side by side fighting, for this against the same people would be fucking wild to see. But if he did come and save Paul Heyman, that would be great. I just wonder why Roman wouldn't be making that save. But Lesnar's an interesting one because his name's been mentioned a few times after the Vince McMahon lawsuit and the implications of Brock in that lawsuit and what he's, being accused of being a part of and whatnot. I don't even know how WWE can bring him back without some backlash, but then again, it's Brock. I've always loved Brock, but some of that stuff's kind of inexcusable at the same time. I don't know what the right answer is there. I mean, if Brock comes back, you are going to have a ton of fan backlash that don't think he should be back. You'll have a bunch of people defending him too, but that's going to be up to WWE on that one. Now, if Brock wasn't implicated in that lawsuit, then I'd be expecting him back at any time, and I'd be wondering where he would fit in as well, because, with CM Punk back and, the bloodline stuff, I think, Brock could potentially fit in fun somewhere, but saving Heyman would probably generate the biggest buzz. I feel like the whole scenario you're laying out there is something that could really happen, but maybe with Roman making the save instead. So I think that's just only going to rely on how WWE currently feels about Lesnar, and if they have any plans of bringing him back at all. I don't really know. They might not. Now, I think a little while later you had 10 more for me, didn't you? There it is. Thanks again, dude. See, now you have me thinking about the stipulation during Survivor Series. So say there was no stip in the first place, then the screw job didn't need to happen. Yeah, well, if there's no stip in the first place, the screw job didn't need to happen. Or if Undertaker would have won, he just would have faced Shawn Michaels or faced Bret Hart, and Bret Hart probably would have had a lot easier of a time dropping the title to the Undertaker. So many things could have been different back in 1997 that would have avoided the screw job, which is just such a dark day. It's been 27 years. In 3 years, I'm going to do a 30-year anniversary video on the screw job. That's nuts. That is nuts, isn't it? Yeah. No, have we already? Yeah, 3 more years. I was about to say, we just did 25. I'm like, I just did a big screw job video like within the last 2 years. That was the 25th anniversary. So yeah, 3 more years. 30th. My God. Oh, yeah. All right. Good to see Nick Musser in here as well. Always happy to see you, dude. Anybody else chiming in as we've been talking? Welcome. Thank you for being here. We just rolled through all of SmackDown last night. Now we have to get into some wrestling news. After that, we'll hit some AEW stuff, talk about Dynamite, talk about Rampage a little bit, the Owen Hart Cup, and how Forbidden Door looks. And we might roll through Collision's results tonight. I did watch the show, but relatively uneventful, but a couple of things did happen. But first, we got to talk about some crazy news. We have to talk about AEW and this rating and the potential of Shane McMahon coming into the company in the future. Wow. I'll take a little sip of my Arrowhead before we get into this one. By the way, while I'm sipping that water, do me a favor if you've not yet already, smash that thumbs up button. And if you are subscribed, click that notifications bell as well, because those are helpful. Let's talk about this past week's AEW Dynamite. We're not going to run through the results quite yet. We're going to do that in a couple of minutes, but we're going to talk about that rating. So this week's edition of AEW Dynamite on TBS drew, are you sitting down? 502,000 viewers with a 0.16 in the demo, in the coveted demo. That is dangerously low. That is Collision Rampage low. AEW Dynamite has had some ratings dips, and we've seen a decline in ratings, but the lowest I've seen is like mid 700s or something like that, 700,000. So this is a dramatic decrease. We had, I don't know anything about this Kendrick Lamar feller that everybody talks about because I have the musical taste of your grandpa. So once Britney Spears and the boy bands hit the scene, I was done. I am forever stuck in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I ain't leaving. So anybody that came around after that, I'm oblivious to. So I don't have any fucking idea who Kendrick Lamar is, or his beef with Drake, or how big his contract or his concert was. But I do have a hard time believing that one rapper's concert could affect a television wrestling rating to that degree. So I can't really accept that. Plus, I don't know who Kendrick Lamar is, and I'm always going to choose wrestling over him. So the concert didn't do anything to deter me from watching AEW. It was also first day of summer solstice, longest day of the year. People might have been out doing shit. I was working. It was a party down at the beach where I work. I didn't get home till late that night to watch Dynamite. So I suppose people could be out doing that. But every wrestling show, there's something going on. Sometimes it's a holiday. Sometimes there's a State of the Union address. Sometimes there's Game 7 of something. Tomorrow night, actually, during the watch-along, I think Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals are going to be going on. Know what we need to do? We need to get the Hawk Tua girl and the Edmonton Oilers girl to meet each other. Yeah, that's what we need to do. So, a lot of times there's sports, there's other things, there's holidays, other, circumstances that might affect a rating. But there was nothing going on Wednesday that would warrant a decrease of that nature. I mean, that's a huge decrease there. So we're building to Forbidden Door. Forbidden Doors annually have been a great pay-per-view. A lot of people don't like Forbidden Door because there's a lot of wrestlers that they don't recognize and whatnot. But again, because there's a lot of people that just couldn't wait to rush to Twitter to whack off about this number, and they're like, well, this shows that Forbidden Door is a waste of time. I'm like, how can you say that? The Forbidden Door has been some of the best pay-per-views they've ever put on. Wrestling fans should like it. Wrestling fans should like Forbidden Door. The numbers and the ratings during Forbidden Door build time might see a decrease because of some of these wrestlers that not everybody knows. But again, I don't think it's the lack of interest in Forbidden Door that would do a number on the ratings to that degree either. So I have a feeling this is just a freak thing. Now, what's going to be really scary is next Wednesday if they pull in the same number. Because what's going to happen now if they're right back to where they were? That's going to prove that this is just some anomaly. So the people celebrating the demise of AEW, first of all, you guys have got to get a fucking grip. They are not going anywhere. It might be panic time for the company knowing that the direction they're going in isn't the right one. But in terms of their strength and their survival, they aren't going to die. They are going to get renewed. Even with these ratings, I think they're still substantial enough for, Warner Brothers Discovery to keep AEW around. I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is AEW not doing anything to fix this, to where they, just plateau out at, at this level of enthusiasm and excitement. But I'm also 47 years old and I've seen all of the wrestling companies have their ups and downs. And this doesn't feel really any different than any of those other times to me. And I'm sure that AEW can bounce back. What I have a feeling not a feeling, but I think like maybe in my head, best case scenario here for AEW is that this is maybe just a wake up call. Because one maybe silver lining in having a rating this low is it might light a fire under them. Like, okay, now it's time to stop fucking around. We have to reevaluate everything and see what we're doing. And a lot of fans who have been voicing concerns about AEW's product, they need more of this, they need less of this, they should start doing this. You pull in a number like this, you might have that company start making changes right away, and just saying, okay, let's just different direction this or change our strategy. I don't even know really what the answers are here, but I think before you panic, you got to see what the show does next week. Because like I said, you had a lot of people really, you had two camps on Wednesday, which is why I completely stayed off social media. You had the camp of people that were transparent as fuck. These are the type of people that tweet 137 consecutive times in a row, pretending to be concerned about the rating. They just want to talk about it. They want to talk about it because it gets their dick hard. They're not concerned at all. They're secretly expressing their pure joy and pure giddiness over this number, and they're disguising that as rational discourse. It's not. It's just them whacking off. The other camp, I hate them worse, but at least they're honest. They're celebrating. I went on an unfollow spree in the last couple of months. I saw somebody that I follow. He posted like a dancing emoji to the number. I'm not doing this. I'm not associating with this type of negativity and fucking stupidity. To celebrate and to hope and to pray and to root for a wrestling company's downfall, for people who have jobs and work, and for another company to help keep the wrestling industry healthy, to root for that to fail because you are so weak-minded that you cannot escape your stupid online social media feuds that you have, and it's all about rubbing it in the other side's face. Politics are a lot like that too. So is wrestling, where you're not thinking rationally. You're not, people in politics, they don't have the thought of the country, best interest of the country at heart. They have the best interest of them yelling and making fun of the other side and saying, ha ha, I gotcha, or whatever. It's like that in sports. It's like that in politics. It's like that in wrestling. And I think wrestling fans who celebrate this type of stuff, quite frankly, are pieces of shit. And I have no respect for you. So just know that. If you got a social media timeline full of celebrating this, I don't like you. And I don't want you here. So just know that going in. But that does not mean AEW doesn't have problems. They do. It's the celebrating the problems that I find gross and disgusting and fucking stupid. But this is a problem. 502,000 is a problem. AEW Dynamite, even though I've been watching them every week, I've been working mostly on Wednesdays. So we used to do Dynamite watch-alongs when I had Wednesdays off, but that kind of changed. So now I usually, for the past, I'd say 3 to 4 months now, mostly Dynamite I've watched on YouTube. I've watched a couple of my DVRs, on fast speed to kind of get notes and whatnot. But for the most part, I catch up on Dynamite via YouTube. Dynamite right now can't miss. There's also that feeling. Television ratings are completely different now anyway. We're really close to the end of ratings even mattering. WWE's moving Raw to Netflix. At some point, ratings won't mean anything. Everything's probably going to move to streaming or a different way of, consuming content. And these type of numbers are going to be replaced by some other metric. So we're really at the tail end of the era where ratings are even a thing, but they still are a thing and you still have to measure them, and even though a lot of people can, because back in the day, back in 1998, 1999, there was no DVR, there was no YouTube, there was no way to catch the show on social media or Instagram or Twitter or a million other people bootlegging the show and uploading it to God knows how many websites. You can so easily watch the product without watching it live. That was not the case in the 90s. That's why those numbers are so high. Nowadays, you can watch it pretty much anytime you want, and you can only measure or consider the ratings so important. And WWE, look at the numbers they've been pulling in on SmackDown. They've been tremendous, but they've still been 3 to 4 times lower than they were in the Attitude Era. They're great for today's standards, but they're very low for 1998 because you don't measure the shit the same way. So WWE right now is crushing AEW in the ratings, but back in the 90s, WWE and WCW were both doing crazy big numbers. And so it's just different now. But when you have a decrease of that level, Jesus Christ, man, you got to wonder, okay, what do we do? The timing of this. We already talked about the current ratings decrease that AEW's been seeing. The drop from, the 900,000s to the 800,000s to the 700,000s. Now the steep one down to the 502,000 is like, holy shit. And they're in the middle of renegotiating the rights deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. They're going to get the deal done, but I have a feeling these hopes of, we're going to double, triple our rights fee from last time, which will make the company profitable, they might not get that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not expecting AEW to not re-up with Warner Brothers Discovery, but the financial side of it, how can you justify giving Tony Khan 3 times more than you were giving him when his ratings were double what they are now? How do you justify that? I'm not in business and TV station land, so I don't even know or care. But it's terrible that you're having to go through this at the same time you're trying to renegotiate a TV deal. So maybe Warner Brothers Discovery has some suggestions, or maybe they say they have some provisions. We need you to do this, this, and this, because they've done their part. When you think about ECW and how poorly they were treated by TNN and all that shit back in the day, Warner Brothers Discovery has been good to AEW. They've requested more content from them. They advertise them. They've got them on 2 of their networks. I mean, they have done their part. So nobody can claim that Warner Brothers Discovery hasn't done enough to promote AEW, hasn't done enough to advertise AEW or to help get them the numbers they're seeking. They have done their part. It's AEW that's not doing theirs. You know what I mean? So, but why is that? You know, I watched Dynamite on Wednesday and I sat there like a giddy little bitch, like this. Remember how I said I just love hearing Ospreay speak? Seeing Ospreay and Swerve have that confrontation, I'm so ready to see this match. The wrestling fan in me loved that whole thing. So, ratings aren't everything. If you enjoy the show and you like what you are watching, what the fuck does the rating matter? The rating matters to the business end of things, to the company side of things, you know. But for fans, if you're watching a show and you like it, really at the end of the day, what do you care what the ratings are? But AEW arguably has lost, you know, a lot of its magic, especially when you see the Jade Cargills and the Cody Rhodes and the CM Punks all in WWE now. And WWE really turned the corner after Vince McMahon, you know, WWE shooting up, you know, and getting white hot at the same time AEW was hitting the skids. You know, that's just the way the timing goes sometimes. And the pendulum is swung dramatically in AEW now. So I'm really, really curious to see what Dynamite does next week, because all the people that rush to Twitter to tweet for a full 24 hours straight, I know who you are. Some of these people that like try to pretend to have discussions about it, all you want to do is whack off. That's all you want to do. So easy to spot the giddiness in these conversations, you know, in every single tweet. And I'm like, for a company as small and irrelevant as AEW, why would you spend 3 days tweeting about it? Over and over and over again, a different reword of the same tweet talking about that number, because you love to talk about the number. It arouses you. That is so goddamn weird to me. I cannot even explain how bizarre that is to me personally to watch that behavior online. It's everywhere. It's so fucking nuts. Get a life. Go outside. Fucking sunlight. Smell the air. Touch the grass. Jump in the ocean. Get laid. Smoke a joint. Anything to not be so fucking pathetic. And if next week AEW's rating, let's just say, is 710,000, that's going to be a 208,000. That's going to be like a 40% increase. So if you were so quick to rush to social media to say why they got a bad one, then you better explain why they saw that increase as well. Are they going to see that increase? I don't know. This is a big test, I think, to test if this rating is some freak anomaly or if this is the norm now. Now, I have a feeling there's no way they can do lower than this rating. Wednesday on Dynamite, I believe, is the go home, right? To Forbidden Door. So, yeah, it is. So they can't do that on a go home to a pay-per-view, man. They got to step that shit up. What are the answers? Everybody likes to talk about the rating. Nobody really has any solutions. You know, tell better stories. They're telling stories. You know, they've got talent. I think a lot of it is they don't have that. It doesn't run like a well-oiled machine like WWE does. You know, they're only 5 years into this, so the infrastructure behind the scenes isn't great. Tony Khan's never really been revered as a great leader, and they have issues that I really, really hope they can rectify. They've made moves. They've made a lot of great internal hires in terms of backstage management and production and all of that. They have great people working there, but the ability to really pull it all together and maybe recapture that magic of 20 and 21 in 2022 just isn't there. And you combine that with WWE getting their shit together, you know, because just a couple of years ago, WWE was the worst it had ever been in its history. And I lived through 1994, man, and 95. I watched Mabel win the King of the Ring, and that was better than what we were getting in 1995. I watched Beware of Dog getting canceled because of a tornado. That was better than 2019. And all of the empty hard cam SmackDowns and Raws that we saw. The uninspiring, boring, formulaic, redundant bullshit that they shoved up our ass every week. And here AEW is fresh, new, alternative, recognizable stars are showing up there, wanting to go there. They're selling out arenas. They're having big audiences. They've got a TV show that occasionally draws over 1 million viewers. That is exactly what the wrestling business needed. We needed that, or we were going to fucking suffocate, choke, and die. Then they showed up. Vince McMahon got caught with his dick in the cookie jar. All hell broke loose, but it resulted in WWE drastically improving their creative. They all of a sudden turned the corner. Cody Rhodes breaks the internet by leaving. CM Punk breaks the internet by leaving. Jade Cargill breaks the internet by leaving. Pendulum has swung. WWE's better than ever, and AEW is now sitting there saying, "Up, we're not the new pretty girl in the neighborhood anymore. We have to figure out how to combat a functioning, hitting on all cylinders WWE rather than a painfully and frustratingly boring product that they were before." It was much easier to like AEW when WWE sucked the pile of dicks that they did. But they don't suck a pile of dicks anymore. They're really good now. So now AEW's got to figure out a way how to stay relevant, stay competitive with WWE in terms of, talent and whatnot, but also in audience. One thing fans have got to remember that I swear they just cannot do, and I've said this before, when it comes to the people that are tribal or throw shade or prefer one company over another, and the WWE, what are they called? What are the WWE fans called? The Fed fans, or what are they fucking called? E-Feds, something like that? E-Drones, whatever they are, them, the bad faith ones. It's fine to be a WWE fan. I'm a WWE fan. But when you're a dick, when you're like that Gareth fucker, like all those fuckers, all those little bitches, those are the ones, that I'm talking about. And with that type of attitude, throwing, and their feelings towards AEW, they're looking and measuring AEW's success against the WWE's, and that's it. They're the two biggest wrestling promotions in the world, arguably. What do you guys think? Is AEW bigger than New Japan? Maybe it's debatable, but I think in the entire globe, it's WWE and AEW. And you've got people talking about AEW like there's some crazy, horrific failure. They're a joke of a wrestling promotion. They're a mud show. Here's a number that might surprise you. This past week's Dynamite had about 1,000 less fans. Think about AEW's attendance being in the shits right now. This past week's Dynamite had a little bit over 1,000 less fans than the biggest crowd ECW ever drew, which was about 6,000 people. Dynamite had like 4,700, something like that, on Wednesday. So, how are you measuring this here? If you're saying, okay, you're not as big as WWE, therefore you suck and don't deserve to exist, that's the attitude you get. At the end of the day, AEW is the number 2 wrestling promotion. They have always been the number 2 wrestling promotion, even when they were cooking and kicking the WWE's ass in terms of enthusiasm. There was a good 1 year solid span there where I hands down preferred AEW over WWE. Absolutely. But those days are gone. But even in those days, even when I preferred AEW to WWE, they were a distant second. They will always be a distant second. WWE is so fucking big. AEW, what they have going for them is they actually have a billionaire owner behind them, to where even though WWE is much bigger, much more successful, and always will be, there is a lot more evenness when it comes to competing for talent. And that's what's going to help, I think, keep AEW a factor in this and always going to be around, is because this is a place where you can go and make WWE money. This is a place where you can go and perhaps make more than WWE money. And now that it's not just Vince making the decisions, they're under the Endeavor umbrella. It might not be easy just to say, oh, let's just throw the whole fucking house at him, where Tony Khan can do whatever he wants. He can pay for whatever music he wants, or theme music, or sign whoever he wants, or offer any amount of money that he desires. And that's a big advantage that they have. But in terms of everything else, the global recognition that they have, and WWE is to the point where people who don't watch pro wrestling think of WWE and pro wrestling as one and the same. Think about that. That's how hard it is to compete with WWE. If you ask somebody who doesn't really know anything about pro wrestling, they say, oh, pro wrestling, you mean like WWE, right? They think it's one and the same. A lot of people might not even know there's other wrestling promotions that do this. Hulk Hogan had that effect. Oh, wrestling, you mean like Hulk Hogan? He became such a household name, and WWE has solidified their brand so much, in just society and globally, that you associate wrestling in general with WWE. That is really hard to compete with. So you're going to have a number 2. But I think it's extremely short-sighted, very ignorant, and extremely naive to look at AEW because they are not as big as WWE, that means they're a complete fucking disaster failure and they do not deserve to exist. Guess what? I'm also not as big as WWE. Do I not deserve to exist? Just because I'm not putting up 1.8 million views on my streams like WWE is for Raw, that means I'm a loser and I don't deserve to be here? That's kind of mean. That's kind of stupid to say, too. At the end of the day, no matter how excited you are about bad news that happens to AEW, they are the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world. Being the number 2 wrestling promotion in the world, when there are a fuck ton of wrestling promotions, isn't that bad. So those fans compare AEW to one thing and one thing only, WWE. Because they are not WWE, they suck. That's their mentality. That's a stupid fucking mentality to have. And it's been a great day for those people watching this AEW number, this rating, and being able to publicly whack off about it. Now, how do they fix this? Drastic changes at the top? Who's the champion? Swerve Strickland. Do you just belt up Will Ospreay right now? I would not. I would not do that. I would wait until maybe your business has got maybe turned around a little bit, or maybe AEW's, created a little bit more buzz, or maybe it's kind of on the upswing again, and then you crown Ospreay. But you have to look at your champion first, just like in a professional team. You'd look at the coach. You look at Tony Khan, he's really the coach, but the top star is the champion, Swerve Strickland. The top angle is the Young Bucks stuff and what they're doing. So does AEW wait and see what happens this week on Wednesday to see if the rating bounces back, or do they start making drastic changes right away? Or could a savior be on the way? Here comes the money. Oh, God. Here comes the money. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Okay, maybe I do. Maybe I do. Shane McMahon in AEW. This is kind of a fun story this week. There's really nothing to it yet, but I guess it came up on Grilling JR, on JR's podcast with Conrad, where they talked about it a little bit, and JR said something to the effect of, it would be so crazy that it just might work. There has also been some rumblings and rumors that Shane has reached out to a couple of AEW contracted talents just to feel out ideas of maybe what it would be like. Again, no confirmation of these rumors, just rumors. Tony Khan did respond to these rumors and stated that he has never even spoken to Shane McMahon or met him ever. So those two have had no conversations. But knowing Tony Khan the way we do, I think if Shane McMahon expressed interest in joining the company, that Tony Khan might actually bring him in. Now, some people are saying, oh my God, that would be so stupid. Maybe. I am a fan of crazy shit. I'm a fan of surreal moments. We've had a bunch of them. Shane McMahon has been in a couple of those surreal moments. The biggest one was when he walked out on Nitro and you saw Shane McMahon's name with that WCW graphic. Is something I will never forget. And imagine if he were to show up in AEW. I was there at WrestleMania 39 in SoFi when he randomly showed up and tried to execute a leapfrog on The Miz and tore his quad, and Snoop Dogg had to come in and make the rescue. And I don't know if he would be coming back into WWE at this point. It sounds like no. And if he came into AEW, I think I would be a fan of it just because I want to see it happen. Will Shane McMahon's presence be enough to save AEW and pull them out of the ratings toilet? No, probably not. There will be the initial boost, and there will be that initial moment, that surreal moment that I'm talking about that everybody's going to want to see, but that will wear off, and then you're probably right back to normal again. But, I mean, shit. Tony Khan might just be into that. Then the McMahons are now infiltrating AEW, but I feel like Shane might be a little bit different. He's always kind of been separated from the family, and if he did come in there, being a an in-ring wrestler is not something I really want to see from him. You know, AEW, for all the problems that they have, one of the problems they don't have is a good talent roster. Their talent roster is solid. They got, even with the losses they've suffered, they got plenty of people there, more than capable of, of driving the truck or driving the ship or flying the plane, or whatever it's called, captaining the ship. So Shane coming in and taking up spots. I mean, we already got Chris Jericho doing that there, and Shane coming in and being a big part of storylines and whatnot. I don't know. I mean, maybe if he came in to oppose the Young Bucks, you know, Tony Khan brings him in. You know, we've talked about Tony Khan needing to be a different, authority presence on AEW. And we've seen that now with Christopher Daniels, who is doing a great job. But the name McMahon covers so much. And I think Tony Khan and Shane McMahon could recreate the hug between Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff. Because a lot of people, back then, why would they bring Bischoff in? Because he was in WCW, and coming to WWE would be wild and surreal. And Eric Bischoff had an amazing run. Eric Bischoff drives me nuts on social media now. He's so unbelievably obsessed with Dave Meltzer that it's fucking unhealthy, and he needs to get a fucking grip on his goddamn life. But he is easily my favorite and the best general manager in Raw history. He had a great run. I enjoyed just about his whole run because he was such an asshole and so good at it. And he played the part perfectly. And that was something that worked. So Shane McMahon, if you're going to bring Shane McMahon into AEW, are you bringing Shane McMahon into AEW to be a character on television? Or are you bringing him in to have a backstage position? Or are you bringing him in to be both? So if Tony Khan were to bring in Shane McMahon, I'd bring him in as the general manager or commissioner, the same way Vince brought in Eric Bischoff. If you do that, you got him out there, maybe, with the Young Bucks, and then maybe occasionally Shane McMahon wrestles in a match or something like that. I honestly, at this point, when I'm looking at a 502,000 AEW rating for Wednesday for Dynamite, at this point, just try anything. You never know. Shane McMahon being the savior seems unlikely, extremely unlikely to me. But if Tony Khan brought him in to be a general manager and he was there to, combat the Young Bucks and what they're trying to do, and he might generate some sort of interest. And now you got a McMahon in AEW, and maybe Tony Khan. Shane McMahon has a lot of business experience as well. I think he's owned a couple of businesses. He's a businessman. He's done a whole bunch of shit. He lived in China for a couple of years, I think. So he could totally maybe come in, and maybe he has input or something he could offer, from his days in WWE or whatever. You don't want to start running your company like WWE, but at this point, if all the fans think the wheels are falling off and the sky is falling, which it's not, and they're not, but some fans still think that, and if that's the belief, you might have to do something crazy. And if AEW was cooking right now, if they were running, 900K or better, or back to their kind of typical numbers from where they were, I would have absolutely zero negative interest in seeing Shane McMahon there. Don't fuck up what's working, but it ain't working right now. So shit, bring Shane McMahon in. At the end of the day, we're all fans. We should all just want to see fun, cool stuff. And I'm at the age now where I don't really take this shit seriously at all. I've been watching for 42 years. So I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about shit. I'm not going to rant and rave in somebody's chat because Drew McIntyre didn't win the title. I got better things to do. So with Shane McMahon and AEW, I'm looking at it from a selfish point of view. I'm looking at it from the point of view as a fan that just wants to see it. I just want to see that shit because it would be cool to see Shane McMahon and AEW. Greg, you're crazy. It would be a complete disaster. Well, then let it be. Let it be. Still want to see it, but who knows? Sometimes the biggest risks turn out to work out. Maybe Shane McMahon going there kickstarts some feud that just gets our juices flowing. I didn't think things could get any worse after the screw job in 1997 until you started seeing the dynamic between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon. And that became very interesting, and that captivated us, captured our attention, and held our attention. and it was just them. WWE's roster in late 97 and through the beginning parts of 98, and all of 98 really, was dog shit. They still hadn't scored anybody yet. No Big Show, no Jericho, no Radicals. None of them were even there yet. It was fucking DOA and Bariquas and goddamn, and LOD 2000 and all sorts of nonsense. Fucking oddities. They had no fucking roster, man. So, back in those days, I think that when I was thinking about the Radicals just the other day too, in that sense, but when they came in and how that was chronicled and how much that changed. But, in 98, they still didn't have any of those yet. So I thought that was going to be the final blow. And the final nail in their coffin was the screw job. They didn't have the talent to compete with WCW. WCW just still had all the stars. They had all the strength. They had all the momentum. WWE, I felt, was going to be circling the drain. And the next thing you know, Vince pays Mike Tyson a bunch of money. That happens, gets a bunch of people's attention. And then Vince and Austin pretty much take over from there. And it was just that one angle. It was just two dudes that took all the fans' eyeballs off a better wrestling roster and put it on another. So you never know. My point is, you never know. You never know what any wrestling company can stumble back into. Think throughout history. How many things that got really over. Think to recent history. How, we stumbled across Broken Matt. Tried some crazy fucking shit. It turned out to work. Got super over. Got Matt a job in WWE. Austin McMahon largely felt like it was fallen into because that would not have happened had Bret Hart not left. And a lot of stuff can be like that. And you can see examples of that throughout lots of wrestling. And all it takes is something like that to happen again. I wouldn't say this is the same type of example, but I am still kind of shocked how over and how appealing the sight of Cody Rhodes in WWE turned out to be. Remember when he was first announced to leave AEW? A lot of fans thought that he was going to get screwed over in WWE. Is he crazy? Why would he go back there? They are going to ruin his career. That didn't happen, did it? But a lot of people thought that it did, or it would. So my point is, you never know. And with AEW, maybe it's not totally panic time or time to take a crazy risk, but I think bringing Shane McMahon in could get you enough attention to where it could increase your viewership, at least in the short term, and might help the TV rights negotiations, assuming Shane were to be in that quick, but they'll probably have that worked out before Shane were to ever get there, especially if we haven't had any conversations between Shane and Tony take place. So the Shane McMahon to AEW story, I think would normally be a non-issue. And even if AEW had a normal rating last week, I might not even think it's that possible. But after that rating, I'm like, you never know. I mean, you got to do something to make a splash or to generate interest or buzz or, shock the audience, whatever you got to do to just breathe life into a product that is really not struggling. I mean, I enjoy the matches. I enjoy the pay-per-views. There's a couple of stories I'm into. I like the champions in the company. But again, there are a lot of their TV shows that feel like I could just miss them. And that's what they need to work on. They need to get me to want to tune in, because if I wasn't doing the podcast, I'd probably skip a few Dynamites. I would because, I get it. I know I can kind of get a general sense of what they're doing, but what you want to do, and, and honestly, WWE's been like that for the last 2 months. But what you want to do is get to the point where you've got some stories or some issues going on TV to where the fans cannot wait to tune in and see what's going to happen. I'm pretty excited to tune into Raw on Monday because of the Wyatt Massacre. And even though I thought Dynamite was a good show on Wednesday, they didn't do anything on that show that made me say, fuck, I cannot wait till next Wednesday. So that's what they have to do. How do you do that? I don't know. I'm a podcaster. I'm not a wrestling creative writer or a booker. So fans, like to think they've got a lot of ideas, but at the end of the day, they don't know either. And what people don't understand is this job is really, really, really hard to do. So when you start having problems or issues and you have to think of solutions while you're trying to still book, your product at the same time, that's a situation I don't envy. So I don't know if the answer is just one good hot angle. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's all it takes. All it took was Hogan showing up, pinning the Iron Sheik, 3 weeks after he debuted, and the business was never the same. All it took was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash deciding not to stay with Vince and take the money to change the business forever. All it took was Bret Hart to get screwed and Stone Cold Steve Austin to stun Vince for the business to be changed forever. So you just never know. And we'll see if Shane McMahon ever shows up in AEW. Here's somebody else that might show up in AEW, Kayla Braxton. We want to wish Kayla Braxton nothing but the best. She announced today via social media that she will be leaving WWE effective next week. She had an interview segment last night with LA Knight on SmackDown, and she looked just completely mentally checked out, and a lot of fans were mentioning that. And all the way back on June 6th of this month, or June 6th, earlier this month, Kayla Braxton changed her social media username, took WWE out of her username and is using her real name, Kayla Becker. So here's what Fightful Select had to say about this today. Braxton announced on June 22nd that she would be stepping away from WWE next week. Fightful learned that Braxton is currently working for the company under a verbal agreement between the two sides following her WWE deal expiring recently. The two sides have been in discussions, but we're told nothing came of them. We are told also that AEW had been made aware of her contract status a couple of weeks ago, but we aren't sure if that was due to direct communication between Becker and an agent or AEW. So if her contract is up and she is under a verbal agreement, she could already have a deal in place with AEW, assuming she's staying in wrestling. Who knows? Kayla Braxton's got a lot of other things. She does modeling. I'm sure she has other aspirations in life, and she might be looking to get into movies or television or news or I don't know, something like that. But if she intends to stay in wrestling, maybe it sounds like to me she's leaving WWE to go to AEW. She could be reunited with Renee Young. Possibly, again, I'm only speculating here. But do you think that maybe Kayla, I thought Kayla Braxton was going to take a step up when Renee Paquette left or Renee Young left. And she's been the backstage, girl on SmackDown. I love her interactions with Paul Heyman. That's a lot of fun. But then they brought back Kathy Kelly. And again, Kathy is on Raw and Kayla's on SmackDown, but maybe bringing Kathy back made Kayla feel that if she wants to advance, she's got a few people in front of her and maybe she can have a bigger role in AEW, be on camera a little bit more. Something like that. Maybe she was referred by Renee, or maybe she hadn't. All these women probably talk to each other. Maybe they're just texting. Hey, Renee's probably like, hey, when your deal's up with WWE, come on over here. I'll get you hired. Again, I'm just talking out of my ass here. Don't be running to the internet and saying, hey, Greg said Kayla and Renee talk on the reg, and that's how she's in AEW. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I kind of hope she goes to AEW. I think that would be cool. I like Kayla Braxton. I don't want to see her leave completely because I don't know whatever else she'd do. I don't know how I'd see her. I'm only going to see her in a wrestling environment. So I've always liked her. So if she sticks around in wrestling and heads to AEW, great. I actually hope that she does. And best of luck to Kayla Braxton, a.k.a. Kayla Becker. Let me see what's next on my news here. All right, we got a couple more things. Before we get into our next piece of business, let me cruise back to the chat here. Not a bad audience in here this evening. Anybody who has not yet smashed that thumbs up button, if you don't mind doing that for me, that would be super duper. There we go. All right, I want to just get back to the chat so I can see what's going on. Make sure I hit all of the questions I need to get to. Refresh. All right, I know there's a couple of more super chats. Yeah, here's a few. Let's knock out these. Oh, there's a bunch. Okay, let's knock out these real quick, and then the next piece of news we're going to be getting into is just I want to talk a little bit about this Hurt Business. MVP made some interesting comments about the Hurt Business that I wrote down and that I thought maybe we would discuss. So we got Hurt Business. We'll talk about Joe Henry. We'll talk about who killed WCW. And then we'll move on to Raw and the Wyatt Massacre. And then we'll move into some AEW results and take a look at where Forbidden Door is currently standing right now in terms of the card, in case you are keeping score at home. And again, happy Saturday, and thanks so much, y'all, for being here. Oh, yeah, Max Pokey, bro. 1,000 likes. Please. We're not quite there yet. We need 10 times more the likes, and we'll be there. All right. Mike Witt, I think you are up next. Thank you for the 5, my friend. Can we all agree the Elite is nowhere near the NWO as far as needle movers? Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that. Since they were formed, Dynamite is just not the same, in my opinion. I thought the Elite would work. I never thought the Elite storyline would be as good as the NWO. Nothing's ever going to really top that, at least for a while. But I didn't think it would be a complete colossal fucking failure either. I love Kazuchika Okada as this heel. A lot of people think he's a comedy character. He's not a comedy character. He's a great wrestler that just has some comedy elements to him. A lot of wrestlers are like that. Kevin Owens is like that. I like wrestlers that have, funny moments, good comedic timing. They're witty, can think on their feet. And Okada with, his bitch and his sing it. And I love all of that. The merch is dog shit. Okada merch is absolutely horrendous. And I think Okada, this current version of Okada, could sell some merch if he had some decent merch to peddle. But that shirt with him in the car and it says bitch on it, ugh, come on, AEW, get your merch game up, man. Oh, man, I don't really buy wrestling merch these days anyway, but man, I could think of a lot of better things to do with Okada than that. And I do like him a part of this group. It's very entertaining. I like the Bucks as well. They're entertaining, but again, they're not, like I said earlier, they're not can't miss television. As much as I like Okada and the Bucks, and I'm kind of cool with the storyline to see where it goes, I'm not chomping at the bit to tune in every week. I'll see it when I see it, type of thing, So, and that is probably why it's that type of mentality amongst regular fans, casual fans, that can have an effect on the ratings like that. When you don't feel the need to have to tune in at that moment, I tell you, more than 500,000 people watch Dynamite, but that's just the rating they pulled. So until you're producing shows that nobody can miss, those ratings are probably going to look like that. And you are right. The Elite is nowhere near the NWO. I don't think there's anybody out there that ever tried to compare those two entities, because if they did, that would be silly. Oh, thank you for that, Juliet. Thanks for the $2. Game 7 of the finals are Monday against Raw. I thought it was tomorrow. So Monday up against Raw is Game 7. How about Edmonton fighting all the way back? My God. Are they down 3-0? Crazy. Kind of rooting for them now. I hope the girl is there. You know the one. Let me see. Who's next? JJ Leg, good to see you. Welcome back, man. As a Punk fan, I thank AEW for existing, because if they didn't, I honestly don't believe he comes back at Survivor Series 2023. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if AEW never formed, if Punk would have come back to WWE. Probably not. Probably not. He had to find somebody. What was going to get him back to WWE is to find someone he hated more than them. And he found that. He had a bad experience in AEW to the point where he is probably rethinking things and saying, you know what, maybe WWE wasn't so bad. And I think that's why he's there. You are 100% right. Ram Vieira was here. Welcome back, man. Appreciate the $5. A beer and good mic work on Saturday. What an awesome week for wrestling. Cheers. I got an Arrowhead. I did have a beer, but I didn't open it. Figured I'd stick to water tonight, but thank you for being here as always, my friend. Let me see who's next. Barry, what's going on? How are you doing? How's wrestling? Is everybody loving everything? As always, Barry dropping in $12 right on. You know what I'm going to do, Barry? I'm going to take that $12 and I'm going to buy a tuna sashimi at Duke's in a couple of weeks when you come see me. Mike Witt is here. Appreciate that $5 from you. First thing I would do is for someone to have a sit down with Jericho and tell him it's time. Chris, thanks for everything you've done, but it's time, in my opinion. Yeah, Jericho in this learning tree, I'm not too interested in it. And that is another, Jericho with this current fucking angle and trying to be all meta and whatnot. And, the deal here is that he's got the TV time. He knows he is taking time and spots and opportunities away from others. He knows that, he's aware of that, and he does it anyway. That's his character. And that is that is go away heat. That's what that is. I understand what Jericho's doing. I get it and whatnot. And maybe there was a time where this would work, but Jericho has really kind of worn out his welcome with a lot of us. Plays a fucking scumbag too, his fucking wife and shit. My God. And we're tired of him. We're sick of him. I think maybe a couple of years ago, this might have been better. maybe maybe when he was like world champion or something, this might have been super entertaining. You know, Jericho is constantly trying to reinvent himself to keep himself relevant so he can keep himself on TV and in the spotlight and keep making money. I guess I understand that. But this learning tree thing is getting some, I guess, a little bit of exposure for Brian Keith and Big Bill, but Jericho's been doing this whole time in AEW, and who at the end of the day really has he elevated? He's tried to elevate people. He's worked with everyone. I've praised him for working for the Orange Cassidys and the Darbys and, you know, and putting a lot of these guys over and whatnot. But at the end of the day, how do they get elevated? They're not on TV and Jericho isn't. He's still on TV and they're not. So what was the point of all that? And now he's doing this learning tree stuff. And I think after all the different renditions of Jericho we've seen, now he's in his 50s. Now, you know, athletically, he is a shell of his former self. And he's sometimes tough to look at. And I just don't need him. I just don't need him. The learning tree heat is go away heat. And again, that can maybe affect it. I don't even know if Jericho was on Dynamite on Wednesday. He was on Collision tonight. So I don't know if they had a segment on Dynamite. I don't think so. But with angles like that are just not interesting, you know, to the fans. A lot of people don't give a shit about the learning tree because it sucks, kind of. Even though I understand it, and I think Jericho's doing a good enough job with it, we don't need it. It's not needed. And I think it's almost too late for something like that to work. You know what I mean? But I don't know who that person would be to sit down with him. I actually think Jericho could be a Shane McMahon contact. If you think about Shane McMahon and who he would know in AEW, Jericho's probably one. They shared the ring together and they had some matches together. He's the one name that would come up first in my head in terms of someone, maybe a Jim Ross as well. Yeah, I don't know. What's up, Victor Colon? Where'd I leave off here? Barry, I got you. Mike, I got you. And then I've got one here from Jermaine Blackwood. What is up? Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that super chat from you. Does Tony Khan realize that both winners of last year's The Owen already received title shot at All In London? Pants without socks rules. So last year they did? I don't even remember last year's winners. Does Tony Khan realize that both winners of last year's The Owen already received title shot at All In London? Oh, yeah, I guess so. I don't even remember who the fuck won last year. But yeah, the winners of the Owen this year get title shots at the Owen, just like the winners of the King and Queen of the Ring get title shots at SummerSlam. And I think both of those situations, you can find yourself, you know, booking yourselves into a corner like they did with Gunther, which is why I wasn't surprised that Drew did not leave Clash at the Castle with the title. So I don't know how wise that is to guarantee these title shots, but as long as you have a plan, it should theoretically work and be okay. But I guess I do see your point. I'm just trying to remember who the hell even won the Owen last year. It was Ricky Starks? Or no, was it no, it wasn't Adam Cole. I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest. Last year's winners were Willow and Ricky. So you're saying they got title shots at All In? I'm just reading it wrong. I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me, but I don't remember them getting title shots at All In, so I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, the winners this year will be getting title shots. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about I Believe in Joe Hendry. Showed up in NXT this week. A lot of fans have been hoping they would see him in NXT since NXT has been working with TNA lately. And they did a big battle royal. Frankie Kazarian was in this thing, which is crazy to see him in NXT, along with Ethan Page, I think, and Brian Pillman Jr., and Joe Hendry got an entrance, got a full entrance, got a promo, and he got an entrance in NXT. Crowd was delighted. They sang the song. His time, however, in the Battle Royal was very, very short. Some fans complained about that. That's because some fans are fucking dumb. There's no reason to complain about that. He wasn't going to win it. No reason to keep him in there longer, build up the fans' hopes that he's going to win it or distract from something else going on. This was a feeling out process. Bring him out in front of the crowd, see the reaction he would get, see the social media buzz it would stir up, and see how the YouTube video would perform. And it performed amazing. It's got all sorts of fucking likes on it, and it's the biggest liked video since WrestleMania or something like that. So Joe Hendry made a big splash. This was just probably the first time we're going to see him around. So getting mad that he didn't last long in the Battle Royal is idiotic. Give me a break. Get real problems and pick your fucking battles, will you? Because that was not a big deal at all. He got an entrance, and he got a promo. What the fuck else do you want? So they got a little tease of TNA's Joe Hendry on NXT. That's great. That won't be the last we see of him either. And I think that's very cool that WWE recognizes. This kind of reminds me a little bit of like Broken Matt. When somebody gets kind of over and gains a lot of attention, WWE is sometimes open to maybe working with them and, keeping Joe Hendry away from AEW as well. He's got one of those weird kind of personalities that can kind of bubble up and get stupidly over, kind of like how LA Knight got over and stuff. So WWE might see that and they might be like, we want to make sure that AEW's decline continues to decline and they don't fall into a character that can completely breathe new life into their product. Let's suck him up too and just keep him away. But I think that Joe Hendry has a WWE personality. I think he'd fit in perfectly there. It was very cool to see him in NXT. And, him being, I don't know what his contract status is with TNA, if it's going to be mostly like Jordan Grace and they'll just work here and there. And then maybe when their contracts are up, they're going to be signing full time with WWE. Either way, I'm excited to see more of Joe Hendry. And now I believe in him. Because when you say his name, he appears, and he appeared in NXT. I thought that was really cool, and I had no issue with the amount of time he spent in the Battle Royal. All right, what's next on my list? What's up, Stone Cold? I'm probably missing a lot of other hellos. Atomic Cody, good to see you. Ryan Adams is here. Lots of other ones. Thanks for being here tonight. The new one, good to see you, Vontae. Welcome back. All right, so this past Tuesday on Vice was episode 3 of the Who Killed WCW series. Now, I didn't take down a bunch of notes. I'm kind of going by memory here. But this episode was primarily focused on Vince Russo and his run there and the things that he did. And his run in the company, I guess I didn't really think about this. I knew it wasn't long, but when on the documentary, he talked about when he was finally done with the company was around October of 2000, but he showed up in October of 99. So Vince Russo's entire run in WCW lasted 1 year. Vince Russo's success in WWE was 2 years, 1997 to 1999 when he left. He was seeing success as a TV writer in WWE. Prior to that, he wasn't doing anything in wrestling and other than like writing for the magazine, but in terms of him writing storylines for a pro wrestling show, he had 2 years of success from 1997 to 1999. Then he had a year of failure in WCW. He had more failure in TNA, and he has had 25 to 26 years of failure and 2 years of success. And yet he never shuts up. He thinks he's got all the answers. He's a fucking asshole. He's obnoxious as hell on his podcast. He's rude. He's just everything you don't want in a human being. And on the documentary, he had some good points because he was a little bit more behaved for the documentary than he is on YouTube. And on the documentary, he did bring up a few good points and some things that were working against him in WCW. And one of those things was, Hulk Hogan. And when I was watching the documentary, I was thinking too, like it was kind of frustrating me just seeing Hogan there in 1999 and how infuriating it is to think about the contract that this guy had and all the money he sucked out of WCW and all the creative control he had and all these clauses in his contract that he had to be the featured wrestler on pay-per-view and he can't be paid less than anybody else. And everything that Hogan ever signed in a contract was designed to benefit Hogan and literally no one else. And arguably, when he first came into WCW, he was helpful to them because he brought a big-time household name into the company that gave them national attention, worldwide attention, allowed them to grow their roster, build their brand, and become a bigger company than WWE. Then he joined the NWO and was a big part of that. But by the time the NWO kind of ran its course, and now we're getting into 1999 and 2000, and we've got this new blood, and Hogan is still there, still in the way, still got his creative control bullshit, still being a hindrance to the growth of the industry, that's when it starts getting annoying. Hogan had a purpose. In like 1994 to 1995, even though those were such cheesy years, so was 96, the first half anyway, he was an asset to them, and he was in the NWO as well. But I say by 98, WCW did not have too much of a use for Hogan, and for him to still be there and just to cause so much goddamn drama, and the way they chronicled the whole thing with Bash at the Beach, with what happened with Bischoff and Hogan, and that was the last time Hogan was there, and that whole situation, which has been talked about a bunch of times. A lot of the documentary, this episode was focused on that. But one of the other coolest things that they talked about in this episode was, in WWE documentaries, because of what happened with Chris Benoit, they don't really talk about the Radicals anymore. We haven't heard about like the Radicals being chronicled, like how they left WCW and joined WWE in years because of the Benoit murders. Well, here, Vice Channel doesn't have these restrictions, so they have no problem talking about them. And it was kind of cool and fun to see the Radicals' exodus from WCW and entry into the WWE to be documented and talked about and chronicled, because we haven't seen that in a long time. So I really like that part of the documentary, but so much of it was focused on Russo. A lot of it was focused on the David Arquette title win, and the David Arquette stuff I remember at the time really pissing me off, but I don't think any fans really held it against David Arquette personally. It was the decision WCW made to put the title on him. And to hear David Arquette in the documentary talk about this and how he didn't want to be champion, and the conversation he had with Booker T after he won the title, after he had won the title in that fluke, and he was like, wow, I can't believe I won this title. Hey, Booker, how many times have you won it? And Booker was like, well, I haven't won it. And then he immediately felt bad. He felt guilty for holding it. I'm disrespecting the business. Arquette understood. David Arquette understood the complaints that the fans were having. And I appreciated him saying that stuff in that documentary. And even when he came out on TV and tried to forfeit the title, he mentioned Booker T's name, and all of that. So, that was really cool. And then, of course, Booker would wind up winning at the whole Bash at the Beach 2000 fiasco. So basically, Russo's time in the company was a complete disaster. They talked about how he put himself out on TV, which he shouldn't have. He should not have put himself out there on TV and try to make himself the authority figure, whatever. He should have just been in the back writing the stories, because the powers that be angle was fucking stupid. And just try to better the product, and they talked about how Ferrara went with him and whatnot, but they didn't really talk about Oklahoma or anything, but they talked mostly about what Russo did. They showed the Goldberg spear through the cage, and Russo insists that Goldberg tried to hurt him on purpose, which Goldberg probably did. I don't think any of the talent really liked Vince Russo very much. And, and maybe in his defense, he was in an uphill battle there, because he was coming in after Bischoff left. A lot of the people that were there were Eric Bischoff's boys, and now Bischoff's gone. He's in his place and he's being rejected. Sure, I totally get that. But it's hard to really have sympathy for Vince Russo at the same time, because he is fucking egotistical as all hell. And I think that is a big one of his problems too, along with having, a million ideas at a time, where just a small fraction of them are going to be good and no filter to run those ideas through. Now it's just all on him. And we could see that they had the most obscenely stupid ideas, the Viagra's on a pole and Judy Bagwell on a forklift, and these dumbass angles and matches. They were trying to be too goofy, too wacky, trying to do stuff that you would see on Raw that would actually be good and relatively entertaining or funny. But then when you try to do it on Nitro, it just does not translate. And there was so much of that going on. So a lot of that they talked about in this episode. And, I don't know if Vince Russo was a focal point, because he is one name that gets talked about a lot in terms of who you want to single out as being the person who killed WCW. I think he is a pretty good candidate, but at the end of the day, I think WCW was mostly dying in the water by the time he came aboard anyway. I don't think Russo would have really saved it. WWE was doing insane numbers. They were crushing it. And it was going to take a lot more than that to turn the ship around in WCW. So his run there was not a successful one. And it ended with him, having the conflict with Bischoff and who's in charge. And then he goes, well, my contract says this, so I'm leaving and you can figure out how to pay me. And that was all, that was nearly the end of it, until I think they brought him back to kind of join up with Bischoff briefly, and then the whole thing fell apart. And within 1 year, he was gone. Now, what's interesting about this, when we talk about who killed WCW, one name that gets talked about a lot when it comes to killing WCW is the former head of Turner Broadcasting, Jamie Kellner, who just passed away yesterday. Now, Jamie Kellner is the one that is ultimately credited with killing WCW by canceling their TV contract. And when Eric Bischoff was attempting to buy the company with Fuzit Media, and they were set to try to purchase the company, and they thought they had a deal in place. Well, I guess they had a clause in the purchase agreement that said they get to retain a TV slot even if they shit-can WCW, and ultimately it was that made Jamie Kellner pull the plug once and for all on WCW. So he just passed away yesterday, right in the middle of this docu-series about who killed WCW. That is amazing timing. Eerie timing, if you will. But rest in peace, Jamie Kellner. So I don't know what the final episode is on. I think there's one more of these, right? So they're already up to the year 2000. There's not much time left. I guess they're going to maybe chronicle the final Nitro or whatnot. And maybe when it's all over, we'll do a big blanket review of all 4 episodes. But this Tuesday will be the final one. The Psycho 45 is here. Appreciate the $5, dude. Hey, Greg, happy Saturday. Just moved back to Los Angeles after being in Texas for 5 years. Glad to be back. Cheers. Well, welcome back to Cali, man. A lot of people are going the other direction, leaving here, going to Texas for tax reasons and stuff, but I like it here. I like the beach. I like the people. Welcome back to Los Angeles, the Psycho. Glad to have you home in our big, beautiful blue state. It's nice. Mike Witt, appreciate the $2 from you. The thing that killed WCW for me was Oklahoma. Well, they were already dead by that point, but that definitely amplified it. I didn't care much about WCW. If I was tribal back in, the heat of the wars, maybe I was a little bit, but by this point, they were no threat to WWE. I wasn't really worrying about them. But when I saw Oklahoma, I was pretty pissed. I mean, it's still fucked up. Still fucked up. But, it's not like WWE's innocent either. Vince McMahon arguably was just as bad to JR in terms of how they made fun of him, poked fun of him and whatnot. They were such assholes. But the Oklahoma thing was infuriating. I always thought that if I saw that little fat fuck Ed Ferrara, I'd slap him clean across his biscuit face. It was just so horrible. Anyway. Maybe we will never know who killed WCW. Let me see here. What else we got on our... I still have a lot of notes. Are you guys okay that I'm still just flapping my gums? We're 2 hours in here. And I still got a few more things to talk about. So if you are on the East Coast here in the U.S., it is now after midnight. You're staying up late. Still pretty early for me. I guess we should at least just mention briefly Monday Night Raw this week. Now, last Monday, we saw the debut of the Wyatt Six and the massacre that occurred at the end of Monday Night Raw. We were waiting for it all night. We knew the QR codes and the glitches have all been teasing that last Monday in Corpus Christi was going to be the day. So when the main event concluded with 6 minutes left in the show, you knew something was up. Lights went out, and we talked about it on Monday. We were here for the Raw review, and this was one of the most well shot and presented debuts I've ever seen. It was so good the way the camera kind of walked through the back there and you saw all the carnage and you saw all the bodies of the wrestlers laid out. Chad Gable specifically leaned up against like a production crate with a big hole in his head and blood splattered all over him. You had other people laying down with blood splattered on the wall, and it looked like they came in and just murdered everybody. And then individually you saw everybody. Nikki Cross crawled out first. Then I think we saw Eric Rowan with the bunny mask and the mallet. Then it was Joe Gacy, who I think might have been sitting on the desk in Gorilla. Then you saw Dexter Loomis. And then finally the reveal of Uncle Howdy, Bo Dallas, makes his way out, and they do the big pose for the group photo. And it was awesome. And we didn't know what to make of that at the time. I mean, that's what I was talking about on Monday. I'm like, well, did we just see everybody killed? What does this mean? Or is it going to turn out to be something symbolic, or were they all knocked out and then it was all staged? Like, how are they going to explain this? And that's been the big question all along, is when you have these crazy over-the-top supernatural type of gimmicks, how does that translate to in the ring? What do you do? How do you make them wrestlers? And how real can you really make it? Because, stuff like the retribution and everything, I'm like, all these people are under contract. You're trying to make it real, but one thing that I actually did not like is 2 minutes after Raw went off the air, boom, Wyatt 6 merch hit WWE shop. I'm like, well, why do they have merch? They just killed everybody. Why are we selling their shit? Why are we selling the merchandise of murderers, of mass murderers? Seems odd. Well, like I said, one of the people that was laid out and assumingly killed was Chad Gable, who had a rough night on Monday. And that really made fans wonder what the hell's going on with him, because it was reported that he had re-signed with the company, but we knew his contract was coming up. Maybe they were writing him off. Maybe he's heading to AEW. Before he was shot in the head and killed, he was advertised this Monday for a Money in the Bank qualifier. I forget who the other two people in the match are. Bronson Reed and somebody else, I think. So after that, we were wondering, well, is he going to work? How is he going to work the match next week? I guess WWE thought that too, and announced on social media around midweek that he was now replaced by Ilya Dragunov. Well, then today or yesterday, it was announced that now he's okay. Chad Gable is medically cleared. They just went in there and just pulled the bullet right out of his brain. They just went in there like tongs, like you'd use to flip chicken on a grill. They just took the tongs, just stuck it right in the bullet hole there, felt around for it. They got it, pulled it right out. Bullet gone. Chad Gable's fine. So he's now medically cleared to compete in this match on Monday, and he's back in. So that means this whole massacre stage that we saw, obviously we knew as fans it wasn't going to be literal murders, because it's not going to be literal murders. But what was all that symbolizing? Was everybody under a spell or a trance, or did they chloroform everybody and knock them out and then paint all the shit on their heads? How did they do that? I mean, don't forget the lights were flickering. We have no idea where Triple H was. Usually he'd be right there at Gorilla, so you would think they got to him too. Drew McIntyre made it out of the building because he quit. So he was spared. So Chad Gable now is back on for his match on Monday, the Money in the Bank qualifier. I was kind of hoping they'd keep him out of it so he can continue his run back to the Intercontinental title, because I was assuming that Gable is going to dump Alpha Academy at some point, or they're going to dump him. We basically saw that happen on Monday with Otis pushing him down and then the Academy leaving, but I still don't think that was the final split. We'll get one more big segment. But now that Gable's been factored into this Wyatt 6 stuff, I'm not even sure if they're going to get that fully paid off. I hope they do, because I really like that idea, that belief amongst the fans that Gable's going to split from Alpha Academy, join up with the Creeds. Gable's going to win the IC. The Creeds are going to win the tags, and we're going to have a rebirth of Team Angle in 2024. But what if Chad Gable qualifies on Monday for the Money in the Bank? He might be, if he qualifies for Money in the Bank, I think he would be the odds-on favorite to win it. I think it might even be likely. Oh, I was about to say it might be, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. I was going to say it might be likely that Gable would cash in on Sammy because he really wants that Intercontinental title. But Gunther, who beat Chad Gable 3 times for the Intercontinental title, is going to be world champion come SummerSlam. So maybe Gable waits. Just a hypothetical. Chad Gable wins Money in the Bank. Gunther beats Damian Priest at SummerSlam. Gable comes in and cashes in on Gunther. Wins the world title from Gunther at SummerSlam. Rematch at Bash at Berlin. Just a thought. But Gable, it's going to be interesting. If I'm WWE, I do not put Gable in the Money in the Bank ladder match unless I'm having him win it. Because why would you? He's got other shit going on. Let him do the shit with Sammy and the dudes and all that. Book one more match between Sammy and Gable at Money in the Bank and do the title change there. That could still happen. In order for that to happen, Chad Gable needs to lose on Monday in that triple threat. And I'm hoping he does. Because if Chad, well, I don't even, it's so hard to think. Chad Gable winning Money in the Bank is an awesome thought to me. but that would be a drastic, sharp right turn from what he's currently doing with Sami Zayn and the IC and Alpha Academy stuff. Now all of a sudden he's Money in the Bank winner. That's kind of out of nowhere. So I'm actually hoping that he loses on Monday. That way we can stay the course with him and the Intercontinental title. But if he winds up qualifying, I'm going to start thinking that WWE actually wants him to win the Money in the Bank, because otherwise I don't know why he'd be in the match. You know? Do you follow that train of thought? Or am I just talking out my ass? That's my opinion or thoughts on this anyway. So we'll see on Monday what goes on. We will be here after Raw this Monday, about 15 minutes after the show goes off the air, depending on if I have to make another thumbnail or not, depending on what happens. We'll be up here live reviewing Raw, so make sure you join us. All right. I think it's now time to talk a little bit more about AEW, but instead of talking about their ratings and what they can do to fix it and whether or not Shane McMahon can save the day, we'll actually talk about matches and angles. Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this stuff because we can blow through it relatively quick here. But this past week's Dynamite, the Dynamite that scored that horrible rating, wasn't even that bad. The show opened up with a great one-on-one match, MJF returning to the ring for the first time in 6 months, taking on and defeating Roosh. Very good match here. We had the Gates of Agony and Brian Cage and Hechicero show up on the Tron after the match praising MJF, and that's where they announced that it would be MJF and Hechicero at Forbidden Door, which I'm fine with, but a lot of fans are like, yeah, whatever. But it's Forbidden Door. You know, it's Forbidden Door. These are the type of matches you do there. Max, I'm sure, will have a huge opponent for All In. It will not be MJF and Hechicero at All In. It's just Forbidden Door, and I think that match might surprise us. So they got that announcement made after the first match on Dynamite. I also really liked the 8-man. That was wicked crazy fun. It was Orange Cassidy, Dante Martin, Kyle Fletcher, and Mark Briscoe defeating Roderick Strong, Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, and Zack Sabre Jr. I loved it. Fucking loved it. The Acclaimed, in an interesting match, this kind of surprised me, they defeated the Young Bucks in an Eliminator match. So now they've earned themselves a future AEW Tag Team title shot. Don't know if that'll come on TV, or I don't think it's going to be Forbidden Door. Probably be after that. Maybe on one of them special Dynamites. I don't know what's coming up next. Do they still do Fyter Fest and whatnot in July? I don't even know. But maybe it's going to be reserved for a show like that. But I think Acclaimed probably just won so the Bucks can have a team to defeat, because they have not been defending those titles very often. And I think they need a successful defense in there somewhere, and Acclaimed will probably be it. We had Daniel Garcia defeating Rhett Titus. After the match, we had Gates of Agony and Cage coming back. They jumped Daniel Garcia, and that's when MJF returned to the ring as well, followed by Will Ospreay. So MJF and Ospreay and Garcia, they run off the heels, and then MJF and Ospreay do the thing where they kind of come back to back and bump each other's backs and then turn around, you know, and that was cool because that's just a little tease. Maybe that's a Wembley match, but I don't think I need to see it at Wembley. As long as we get it some point in the future, hopefully for a championship, I think that can be crazy fun. Little tease there. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Didn't love the contract signing on that one. Love everybody involved. All these super fine women, Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa and Mariah May. But it was Toni and Mina's contract signing. Mariah May was kind of moderating it, I guess. And they had the fun love triangle stuff. A lot of fun lines by Toni Storm. I will slap your tits off. And Toni says her buffet is wide open, so grab a bowl and line up. I don't know what that means, but I like it. But the segment itself, just okay. And I do like, you know, I am into this angle a little bit. I like Toni and Mina and Mariah. And of course, they all have history, especially Mina and Mariah. So this is, you know, for the 18 to 34-year-old males in 1998. This is for us. This whole entire segment and angle. And honestly, this would be better than what we saw back in the Attitude Era, because when WWE tried to show us TNA or tits and ass in the Attitude Era, it was on women who couldn't wrestle. It was your Keeblers and it's just your bikini guy contests and stuff. At least you have hot women in title matches here. who can all, kind of work at the same time. So I wish we would have had this type of stuff more in 1998, where it was more driven by the women involved in the angle rather than the thoughts of the perverted demon running creative behind the scenes. I like this way more when it comes to your thirst traps. We also had some Owen Hart stuff go down on Dynamite. So we had the Owen Hart quarterfinals. Chris Statlander defeated Nyla Rose to advance. And for the men, in the main event, we had Pac defeating Claudio to move on. So here's how the brackets currently look for the men. On the left side, you've got Pac defeating Claudio. And at Forbidden Door is where we're going to get that Danielson and Shingo Takagi match. And then over on the right side, you've got Jay White and Rey Fenix and Jeff Jarrett and a wild card. When Jeff Jarrett was first announced for the tournament, there was a lot of people saying, why the fuck is Jeff Jarrett in this? What the hell? All this other great talent in AEW, and you're putting Jeff Jarrett in the Owen Hart Cup. That makes no sense. That's what they said. For those who don't know, Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett kind of knew each other. They were bros. They were tag team champions. I got to see them wrestle live in person as tag team champions. One of Owen's best friends. That's why he's in the tournament, for those of you wondering about that. But that made me kind of laugh and also pull what little hair I have out of my head reading those type of comments. But Jeff Jarrett's facing the wild card. Who's the wild card? Who's the wild card? It can't be Ricochet, because that match is going to happen way before Ricochet's contract is going to be up. Could be Hangman Page, which I wouldn't hate. Somebody mentioned Nigel McGuinness, I saw. Maybe if he wants to get in there with Danielson, but I thought they were going to maybe do that match at Forbidden Door. At All In. But maybe if Tony Khan wants Danielson in a title match at All In, you got to do the Nigel match before. Maybe you do it in the Owen finals. But I don't know if I want to see that. The way it looks, I mean, unless the wild card is somebody major, I mean, shit, Jeff Jarrett being in the finals might kind of be nice, but I don't even know if I want to see that, to be honest. I would like to see, when I look at the brackets and you look at everybody in it, to me, the only legitimate picks would have to be Danielson and Jay White, because it would be a great victory for Jay White if he won the tournament. But I also think Danielson in his final run, I think Tony Khan wants to give him a title shot, or Danielson wants a title shot. Maybe Tony Khan can talk Danielson into sticking around for another 8 months, and he puts the title on him to have a farewell run with the belt. I'd love that if Danielson won the title at All In and you got the yeses and all that stuff. Maybe that's what AEW needs, is to put the title on somebody right now that's incredibly, incredibly beloved. But I think Swerve is beloved. I think Ospreay is beloved. But Danielson is a WrestleMania main eventer. Danielson is somebody who has just humongous history-making Hall of Fame level moments in his career, that if you're trying to, turn your ship around and try to increase your viewership and ratings and stuff, maybe this is something you want to do. I don't know, but I wouldn't put Danielson in it just for him to lose again, especially when he's this close to kind of wrapping it up and calling it a career. I think if Danielson were to get a title shot, he'd probably lose the title shot, but I'd like to see him win it. I wanted him to be AEW champion when CM Punk first bounced out. Once Brawl Out happened, I'm like, put the belt on Danielson. He's the most wholesome guy you have, with all of this, bad press surrounding your company. And CM Punk, what happened there, and the brawling and the ugliness and the infighting and all that nastiness. Danielson would be the perfect guy to put the belt on, but they gave it to Moxley instead. But now, maybe you're in that situation again where Danielson would be the answer. Things aren't great right now. Go with Danielson. Put the belt on a Hall of Famer for a little while before you pass it to Ospreay or whatever you want to do. Again, I don't know what the right answer is. They could possibly give the win to Jarrett as a feel-good thing, but if that was the case, I wouldn't be putting Danielson and shit in the tournament, So I'm going to rule out Jarrett, even though him making it to the finals, I wouldn't rule out. But since we don't know who the wild card is, I'm not even sure if I can really put him past the first round. But if he were to make it to the finals, I think win, lose, or draw, even if he were to lose, I think that it would still be a feel-good moment in its own way. And it would probably be important to Jeff Jarrett maybe to be there to see Martha and be a part of that whole thing. Even in a loss, I think that, like, for example, if it's Jarrett and Owen, and tonight, by the way, on Collision, they ran a really nice video package of Jarrett getting very emotional about Owen Hart and how he wants to be in the tournament and win it for him or whatever. But if it's Jarrett and Danielson wins, Jarrett's going to be incredibly gracious, in defeat. And it might be a way to where Jarrett cannot win the tournament, but still be involved in the ending of it. If he's there to congratulate Danielson, and maybe be the one to present him the belt. I don't know, something like that. Just to kind of have Jarrett in the mix of it could still be important to Jeff Jarrett and something that would still be very special to him, even though he doesn't exactly win the tournament. You know what I mean? So the way the bracket is set up, I think the wrestling fan in me wants to see Danielson and Jarrett in the finals, with Danielson winning, but taking a game Jeff Jarrett. I mean, it might be a great way for Jeff Jarrett to have, his age being able to hang with Danielson and maybe just give it that little extra something. Because in a normal match, Jarrett and Danielson would probably put him away in relatively quick fashion. I can't see a world where Jeff Jarrett would beat Danielson in a match clean. But if you have this match and Jarrett just has one more last gasp, it's going to be the best, his final good performance right at the end of his career, and he's finding all of this inspiration and finding this desire and this fight in him is all coming from Owen, is all coming from being in the finals of this thing, being in Owen's hometown, fighting in the tournament named after his former good friend and fellow co-holder of the tag team titles. And he comes up on the losing end, but he takes Danielson to the absolute limit to where 2 or 3 times in the match, he's got near falls on him and you think he's won. And I'm telling Jarrett, between now and then, get yourself in shape for this. Get yourself in shape and make sure, like, how Foley or Rock gets ready for some sort of a crazy match. Get yourself cardio ready to have yourself the match of your life and go down graciously in defeat and make Owen proud, make yourself proud, give your career one final great moment that might supply you with the necessary closure to where you can hang up your boots once and for all and not have lingering regrets or an itch or desire to get back in there, because that would be a great way to end it if I was Jeff Jarrett, and not necessarily end it like that's your final match, but, knowing that after this point, you can retire a happy man. That would be great for Jeff Jarrett. So maybe that's something they do, but that is one scenario that I wouldn't mind seeing as a fan. Kind of like a babyface match, Jarrett and Danielson, with Jarrett taking Danielson to the limit and putting up a fight that the fans did not think he was capable of putting up. And going down in defeat, and a point where it's like the hug in the middle, Danielson even raises his hand and, hey, show of hands for this guy, take him to the limit like this. Just a love fest, all for Owen. I think it would be nice. It would make me feel good. As a wrestling fan to see something like that. So that's what I'm thinking for the men. For the women, I don't know. Over on the left side of the bracket, we had Willow Nightingale defeating Serena Deeb last night on Rampage. And then on Dynamite, we had Statlander defeating Nyla Rose. So they both move on. We're going to get that match now. And then on the right side, we've got Deonna Purrazzo and Shida coming up sometime soon, and Mariah May and Saraya. So that'll be on the right side of the bracket. I think when you look at the field here, Willow winning again, I don't know. I might not do that. I feel like it's Mariah May's tournament to win. Toni Storm kind of volunteered her for the tournament. And since they're in the middle of this kind of love triangle thing anyway, Mariah May and Toni Storm at All In, I think would be a fun match to do. So I think Mariah May and Danielson right now are my picks to win the Owen Cup tournament. Let me know if you have better ideas. Last night on Rampage, I mentioned that Willow and Serena Deeb Owen quarterfinal match with Willow getting the win there. We also saw Lio Rush defeat Action Andretti to qualify for the TNT ladder match at Forbidden Door. And Lio Rush is he's figured into the Collision intro now. It sounds like he's going to be sticking around AEW more permanently, and I think that's great. Lio Rush is the best. I think Lio Rush should form a tag team with Roosh, and they should come out to the song Rush Rush by Paula Abdul. That'd be great. Maybe tie in Keanu Reeves. If you know, you know. Tonight on Collision was a pretty skippable show, but we had some decent matches on there. Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata defeated the Premier Athletes. Chris Jericho and Big Bill defeated the Private Party. After the match, Brian Keith came in for a beatdown, but Joe, Hook, and Shibata came out to make the save. Joe got on the mic and issued a challenge, a 6-man for Forbidden Door, so that sounds like it's a go. We had Okada defeating Ultimo Guerrero in an eliminator match, and Okada rainmakered his mask off. He was trying to undo the mask throughout the whole match, but then when he went for the finish, he hit him so fucking hard the mask just flew off. Hilarious. We had the Patriarchy. We had Nick Wayne and Kill Switch and Christian defeating the Iron Savages and Jack Jameson. Are the Iron Savages Bear Country? Is that who they are? I thought they were Bear. I don't know who they are. They look familiar to me, but Patriarchy took them down. We had a tag match with Toni Storm and Mariah May defeating Layla Hirsch and Lady Frost. That one wasn't bad. And we had the House of Black. It was Malachi and Brody King. They defeated two guys. I didn't catch their names, but one of them looked just like Aja Kong. We had Hechicero winning a tune-up match for Forbidden Door against MJF over Daddy Magic. We had that Jeff Jarrett promo I mentioned, and in the main event, it was an international title match. Will Ospreay defeating Brian Cage to retain the title. Good little 2 hours of wrestling. I was watching it as I was finalizing my notes for the show tonight. I was also vacuuming and doing shit around here as I was watching the show, just kind of keeping my eye on it, and it looked like a totally decent night of wrestling over on Collision. I will, though, however, almost because I'm just sick of hearing people complain about it. I personally don't care because I'm a wrestling fan and I got better things to complain about, but a lot of fans get very upset around Forbidden Door time when people come in who they might not have heard of, and they go, who? And because they haven't heard of them in their little tiny, tiny, tiny bubble that they live in, that means that they must be completely unknown to the rest of the world. And that's not true. And you see so many of these comments over and over, people getting all uppity about the matches at Forbidden Door. I'm ready for Forbidden Door season to end so we can get back to business, because that is one downfall of the Forbidden Door pay-per-views. Even though I like them, they do kind of halt your booking. You know, if you got stories to tell, some of them, not all of them, but some of them have to take a break while you do your Forbidden Door stuff, and that can be a problem. It's the same kind of principle that I would complain about with WWE putting Hell in the Cell pay-per-views on a specific month on the card. And I'm like, well, what if you don't have any feuds that need a Hell in the Cell match? Now you're just sticking two people in there. Same concept as this. So after Forbidden Door, hopefully AEW can really get cooking and build themselves up a big all-in pay-per-view. I said last year that they will never draw that crowd again. I thought that was very impressive. Everybody got all up their own asses about the crowd and were so angry that they actually pulled a good number, and I was happy for them. But I also felt like that was the limit. I cannot see them doing any more fans than that, and I think this time around, they're going to do anywhere from 20 to 35,000 less fans than they did last year. I think they're going to be looking somewhere in the 40 to 50 range instead of the 70 to 80 range is most likely what it's going to be, unless they just have an extremely, incredibly hot summer and they pick things back up after Forbidden Door and get cooking again, and fans are excited for All In. Maybe. But I think last year was going to be the pinnacle for AEW in terms of full-blown attendance for probably many years to come. That's going to be tough for them to ever break that record. Here's what we're looking at now for Forbidden Door. We'll run through this, and then I will answer questions and see if there's anything else you guys have to talk about, because I'm at the end of my notes, and I'm also almost at the end of my voice. How does Michael Cole call a 5-hour pay-per-view? By the way, question to ponder. Michael Cole isn't going to do this forever. Who is his successor going to be? Just think about that. here's what we have for Forbidden Door so far. Here's what the card is looking like. Chris Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith. Excuse me. Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith taking on Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Orange Cassidy. Danielson versus Shingo Takagi in that Owen Cup quarterfinal match. MJF versus Hechicero. Mercedes Moné taking on Stephanie Vacour. This is going to be for the TBS and New Japan Strong Championship. John Moxley defending the IWGP title against Tetsuya Naito, and the TNT ladder match for the vacant TNT Championship, which so far has Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Jack Perry, and Lio Rush qualified for. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches so far. We'll probably get 2 more, maybe 3, and that will be our card. Rodrigo's got $2 for us to tell me that Keith Lee, Miro, or Harry Smith could be the wild card. Yeah, Keith Lee and Miro. I know they were kind of injured for a while there, but I don't know their status. You mentioned Keanu Reeves, John Wick, and Bill and Ted. Keanu Reeves is in the Paula Abdul video that I mentioned. That's why I brought him up. Yeah, Mauro Ranallo maybe. But man, I don't know if I could handle Mauro Ranallo being the top guy. I liked him and everything, but my God, he is maybe too much over the top. Corey Graves, I suppose, is probably the one that makes the most sense at this point. But it feels like somebody's going to have to take over those duties. I mean, Michael Cole has a big role in WWE, and I don't know if he's going to want to do this forever. And at some point, the older you get, though, the less good you get at this. See Jim Ross. So Michael Cole, you would assume that at some point will start to decline, maybe in his abilities, even though he's tremendous at what he does. He's not going to be able to do it forever, and somebody's going to have to fill the role, or you're just going to have a hodgepodge of guys and just interchange them. And I think you should have a head of your announced team or whatever creative title Michael Cole has. But he's got some pull in the company. I know that. Man. All right, let me scroll back here and see if there's anything else you guys want to talk about before we get out of here. Gilbert, some of these comments. Damn, Colin Wright. It's 5:38 in the morning for you. You were here 30 minutes ago telling us that. We want a good mic work marathon. I'll do my best. One of these days we could try to do like a 24-hour stream. I'd need some help or some guests. Oh my God. So did you guys see, I guess on Monday night after the Wyatt 6 debuted, they all went to Whataburger and had dinner. The whole Wyatt faction. It took a picture at Whataburger. So, when you murder people, when you go on a mass murdering spree in the back of a backstage locker room in a wrestling event, you build up a hunger. So when you go to Whataburger, you can satisfy that hunger and replenish your energy for more murdering. And that's what's great about Whataburger. So they all went there and had themselves some food after they just wiped out the whole damn WWE roster. Funny stuff. But it was all of them. We had it right. It was Rowan. It was Gacy. It was Nikki Cross and Dexter and Bo Dallas. And Dexter Lumis had longer hair going on. He looked pretty good. I liked it. I'm glad he didn't get released. Always liked Dexter Lumis. So we will see how this goes on Monday night. I am kind of curious to see what the faction does next, or just going to be more teasing. I mean, one mistake they made with Bray Wyatt and some of this stuff is taking too long to get to shit. So if they're going to have motivations, if they're going to have a target, anybody that they're singling out, get to it. Don't play too many games with us. Not too many more puzzles, to where we have to follow a series of clues for the next 8 fucking weeks till we figure out who you're going to feud with. Don't do that. Don't do that. So I trust that Bray Wyatt's passing and the desire to want to tribute him and create a faction and an angle in his name would be well thought out and well thought through. And they wouldn't just start doing stuff on TV before some sort of a semblance of a plan. You would think, right? Because WWE used to do that shit. I think they brought The Fiend on. They spent all that time putting that costume together and the music and all of that. They focused all that energy on the look and the presentation, focused no energy on the story. And I hope that it's a little different this time, to where the focus is balanced out between both, because the faction looks great. The costume work, all that stuff is tremendous. The lighting treatment and how it's presented on TV looked really cool. So if that same energy can be applied to what they're doing creatively, then great. But I have a hard time sort of thinking of or understanding in my head what type of stories they're going to do. Surely they're going to feud with people, but they're just going to be in the ring wrestling? Or, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know how it's going to work. I mean, obviously they're a faction. Everybody in the faction are wrestlers who can work, so they will be in the ring, but what's the first match? I mean, the leader of the faction obviously is Uncle Howdy. Is he going to be considered a main eventer? Is Uncle Howdy going to be getting championship shots? I mean, they could use now the Wyatt Six to get out of a title match. If they got some sort of match coming up, like let's say, I don't know, Seth Rollins and Damian Priest, maybe they show up there. One of the things I mentioned, we talked about this a lot on Monday, but when it comes to SummerSlam, what does Seth Rollins do at SummerSlam if he doesn't beat Damian Priest? Because I think Damian Priest should take the belt into SummerSlam, but we don't know for sure. So I have two trains of thought here when it comes to Rollins and Priest being set up for Money in the Bank, because we did see Rollins return on Monday. So with Rollins and Priest now set for Money in the Bank, let's say Priest survives. Who does Seth work with at SummerSlam? He's going to have a whole nother opponent set up in time to build a SummerSlam match against that guy. Who would that guy be? My thought was on Monday is that Rollins might be facing Priest in order to insert him into the championship picture at SummerSlam. Like, for example, if there's some crazy bullshit finish, or if Judgment Day screws Seth, or if there's a disqualification and there's no winner declared, something like that. And then maybe Pierce is like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Rollins, you're also going to get a shot at SummerSlam, and it's going to be Rollins and Gunther facing Damian Priest in a triple threat. You could do that just to make the match a little spicier. And then, you could theoretically have a finish that doesn't involve Gunther where he loses and then he goes to Bash at Berlin to win the title there instead. SummerSlam is probably the better place for that. But maybe inserting Seth Rollins into the match and making it a triple threat will make the match itself better. Maybe that's the thought. Because Priest and Gunther, I don't think it will be a bad match or anything, but if you add a little flair to that, and that flair would be Seth Rollins, he's gonna enhance that match a lot. And you can do some fun things if you add Seth to the mix, and I think it might be a more fun and more entertaining championship match than just Priest and Gunther one-on-one. And you still have Gunther win. He still wins the title and whatnot, just pins Priest or whatever. That could happen. Or maybe Rollins and Priest gets interrupted by the Wyatt Six, and it's Seth Rollins versus one of the Wyatt Six at SummerSlam. Maybe Bo Dallas, or maybe somebody like Joe Gacy or something. But if that happens, you'd think Seth Rollins kind of needs to lose, and maybe, Rollins has already done enough sacrifice, and he did tremendous. Put Cody Rhodes over 3 times in 2022. The work he did between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, he deserves to be applauded for. Total fucking trooper. Did everything for everybody else. So now you'd be asking him, to use his name and his equity to put over yet another, incoming faction or person in the Wyatt Six. But Rollins would be one hell of a name. I mean, if this faction is going to mean anything, if they want this faction to be a big deal, and they want to tribute Bray Wyatt in the best way possible, you would think Seth Rollins would have no problem putting these guys over. It's for Bray, of course. You need to beat somebody that has some stature in the company. You can't just beat, I don't want to say anybody's name and insult him. You can't beat Akira Tozawa. You got to beat somebody major to let the fans know that the Wyatt Six is a big deal. So when Rollins came back, that kind of made me wonder what he's going to do at SummerSlam if he's already working with Priest at Money in the Bank. Now I think he might be working with the Wyatt family, or the Wyatt Six, which, by the way, is spelled, I guess, SICK and then the numeral digit 6, or the number 6. And it's a cool logo I have here on the screen. So what do you guys think? Do you think that's possible? Do you think it's going to be Rollins eating a loss to an Uncle Howdy at SummerSlam? Or is he going to be involved in the title match between Priest and Gunther? Or is he going to win the championship at Money in the Bank, so he's the one to face Gunther at SummerSlam instead? But I think that would be silly. I think it would be, if you're looking to make the match itself better, you don't have to have Rollins champion in there. You can just add him to the match. Or make it, well, I guess you could have him champion, but you still make it a triple threat. But I wouldn't take the title off of Priest, put it on Rollins just to give it right to Gunther, and make Rollins a random transitional champion for no apparent reason at all. I would just have Priest pass it to Gunther, and that's that. We don't need to resurrect 1998 title belt hot potatoing here. There's no need for that. So Rollins, I think it's one of those two things. Rollins is either going to be inserted into the title match at SummerSlam. It's going to be a triple threat to make the match better, or he's working with Uncle Howdy. Other than that, I don't know who is on the roster that could turn around them and work with him at SummerSlam following Money in the Bank. Like who could it be? Any celebrity that would come in and do that? John Cena come back? I've wanted badly, and the fans are owed a Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns match, 1-on-1. But I don't think that would be a SummerSlam match either. I can't see that happening. What, Roman's going to come to Raw all by himself and ignore all the shit that's going on SmackDown and work with Rollins? It's not going to happen either. So, I don't know. Let's see if you guys have got any ideas down here. Braun Breaker. Okay, Seth and Braun Breaker, maybe. Seth and Becky versus Mommy and Dom, no. Becky could be coming back soon, though. Well, Ryan, that's what I'm saying. That situation between Rollins and The Fiend was kind of what popped in my head. Rollins has always hated the way all that went. Maybe this is a way for him to right that wrong, feel better about how that went, to work with a Wyatt entity again, but this time do it right in honor of Bray Wyatt. Because Seth Rollins was his friend, despite the fact that they had a couple of weird-ass matches that a lot of fans got pretty angered over. The two of them were cool, and they spent time together. They came up together. They're from that class. So, Rollins, I think, would be honored to do anything he can to use his name to help this angle, is the way I would look at it. If I was in Rollins' shoes, I would be willing to do that. I know that I've built up myself to a big enough star to where no loss is give me, where no loss I suffer will be enough to prevent me from winning another world championship. No way. I mean, if it was up to me right now, I would have Rollins be the one to dethrone Cody at WrestleMania 41. As the ultimate payback for everything Rollins did for him this year, getting him to that title. Cody holds the belt for the rest of the year, keeps successfully defending it, and then Mr. Rollins wins the Royal Rumble. That's what I'd do. And then Rollins just challenges Cody. And you can do Rock and Roman on the other side or something. Cody and Seth, maybe main event right night 1, and then Rock can get his fucking main event on night 2 like he so desperately wants. Maybe you can do all that. But you also have to do Cody and Rock at some point. So I don't know. Maybe that's what they do. Well, no. Well, then when the hell is... Here's the matches we have to have. Cody and Rock, Seth and Roman, and Rock and Cody. Oh, right, I said that already. Cody and Rock, and then Seth and Roman, and Rock and Roman. Those are the 3 matches we need. But they can't all happen at WrestleMania. One's going to have to happen away from WrestleMania. So maybe it's, because Rock is involved in 2 of these. Rock seemingly needs to face Cody, and he needs to face Roman Reigns at some point. So which match comes first? which match happens at WrestleMania? Or do both matches happen at WrestleMania 1 year apart, and we're looking all the way to WrestleMania 42 for one of these matches? I don't know. Thanks for the 99 cents, Population 420. Appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I know. We got Roman and Seth at Royal Rumble 2022, but a lot has happened since then, and a lot happened at this past Royal Rumble, or I'm sorry, this past WrestleMania, and Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns' obsession with Seth Rollins cost him his championship. So there is no way we can not get that match. There is a story there, and those two need to battle. And I think when that happens, I think Roman kind of owes Seth a victory on that too. That's why that one might be a little further in the future. We can't have Roman coming back and just losing 4 matches in a row here, even though he owes, Rollins a victory and shit. Hopefully he won't lose to The Rock, but he'll have to put a couple people over. I mean, Roman Reigns and CM Punk is a match I wouldn't mind seeing either. Yeah, that's not enough to make me not want the match at Beetle 9/11. I get what you're saying. Well, we shouldn't speak for anyone. Rock would want to put himself over. Of course, there's going to be ego and that type of thing always going on in politics. But at the end of the day, I would like to also think the good and future and success of the business would also be considered. But The Rock pinned Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. And I said prior to WrestleMania, I predicted in the predictions for WrestleMania that in that tag, Rock would pin Cody. That way, when they do the match, Cody can beat him. So I'm not convinced that when Rock and Cody face, Rock's beating him. But I'm not sure if Rock's going to come back to lose to Cody and then lose to Roman as well. He might have to get a win in there somewhere. I just don't know. But it definitely sounds like Rock does have some of those elements to him, some of those Hogan-type elements, now with Brian Gewirtz at his side and the things that they were trying to get done around WrestleMania time and the long way we had to take, and their kind of warped perception of what reality is. I could certainly see the fear of Rock pulling his rank or something and insisting that he's going to win. That's just the reality of the business. But I'm not sure if it's enough, that fear is enough for me to not want to see a really cool match. You know what I mean? So I'm willing to take my chances on that. I mean, and I'm not against, Rock beating Cody as long as it's part of a story or we get a return match or something. But if it's just going to be a one-off, one-time Rock versus Cody Rhodes, and Rock's already pinned Cody once at WrestleMania, and then Rock beats Cody clean, and then that's it, not even in The Rock's ego would that make any sense in reality. So I think if Rock is to beat Cody when they face, there's got to be some other match where Cody beats him or something, I would hope, but you never know. Yeah, one thing I did not mention here, I did not mention this story. Thanks for bringing up WrestleMania in Indiana. I guess the city of Indianapolis is close to securing a multi-event deal with WWE that might secure them a future Royal Rumble and WrestleMania all there at Lucas Oil. Now, not probably in the same year, but they'll probably have maybe a 5 or 7 year deal where they get a Royal Rumble 1 year and then 2 years later they get a Mania, something like that. So it sounds like these are becoming possibilities too, to where WWE is starting to make deals ahead of the next one on the calendar. Like we already know, not only this SummerSlam, but the next SummerSlam are normal SummerSlams. But the one in 2026 is going to be a 2-night event. So they've already figured out, you would think normally WWE would announce the 2-night shit would start next year or something. But no, this is 2 years from now. So now if they're starting to strike deals with cities for future events, they could have Royal Rumbles, they could have Royal Rumble 5 years from now plotted, but not the 1 year from now. It just depends on how this falls in. This might make it a little confusing and convoluted and keeping track of stuff, but that's their job, not ours. So I think that's good for the city of Indianapolis, but Indianapolis is not really a destination city, but a lot of people live there. It's centrally located. I think if you're in Detroit, Cleveland, Toronto, New York, Pittsburgh, Louisville, Virginia, Charlotte, Chicago, St. Louis, all that shit's drivable for all of those cities. Detroit, all of that's drivable for that part of the country, and that's where the majority of the people in this country live. So they would certainly have a market in terms of sellouts and that type of stuff. But Indianapolis, whatever. I guess it's been, gosh, by the time they get there, it might be close to 35, 40 years since a WrestleMania. Last there at WrestleMania 8 with the big Warrior return and the Savage and Flair title match classic, Brett and Piper. What a mania. We've watched that together right here on the channel. Speaking of watch-alongs tomorrow, don't forget, King of the Ring 2000. We're going to be watching it right here on the channel together, and that will wrap up our King of the Rings for the month. And then after that, we're going to be watching Forbidden Door. And then that might be my last watch-along until I get back from vacation. I'll have to figure all that out, but it'll be a busy couple of weeks. Anything else y'all want to get into before I bounce out of here for the evening? Let me double check and make sure I didn't miss any super chats or if any other funny comment strikes me. Yeah, I think I got everybody. All right. Well, cool. Well, look, anyway, guys, I want to thank you very much for hanging out tonight. This was a lot of fun. I'm loving these Saturday night Greg events. Any chance I have to do these, I will do them. They are easier than the Winged Eagle podcast that I do during the day, and I'm usually operating on a time schedule because then I got to head off to work and whatnot. And doing these at night are much more fun because I can take my time and we can really kind of dissect stuff and hopefully not bore you to death in the chat. So I appreciate y'all being here. If you're on the East Coast, thanks for staying up until 1 a.m. You are loyal and y'all are the best. Everybody else, have a great rest of your night. Thank you again for being here. Don't forget, tomorrow night, King of the Ring 2000, Monday Night Raw review as well. We'll be up here the next 3, possibly even 4 days in a row. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks again. Love y'all. Peace.